Hello and good morning, cinephiles. And I'm coming to you today a couple of minutes early because today is a very, very special day. Today is the day that the Scream trailer comes out. The trailer for the brand new Scream movie that will be blessing our screens in 2022. We are getting that trailer in approximately 4 minutes. I'll just flip on over to the internet view. You can see here we've had the Scream Twitter account counting it down. 10 minutes to go, and that was 6 minutes ago, so we are not very far away from it. So, this is going to be a little bit different than the typical morning movie show. I am going to download this trailer as soon as it comes out. I presume that it will be on YouTube, and then I will show it to you live right here. If you're here, if you're new here, please get in the chat. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know how you are. And if you are excited for the Scream trailer, I know I am. I am a big fan of the Scream series. I remember having the first Scream movie gifted to me on VHS when I was far too young to be, to have a horror movie like Scream being gifted to me. And this has just got me all giddy. And it seems like everyone has just been waiting for this trailer for so very long. And now is the day that we finally get it, that we finally get to experience it. So, we're keeping an eye on it. We're keeping a watch out for it. While we're waiting, maybe get in the chat. Let me know what your favorite Scream movie is and why it's the first one. And also, give me your rankings. Give me your Scream movie rankings. For me, it's Scream 1, Scream 4, Scream 2, Scream 3. Although Scream 3 will always hold a special place in my heart because of Jay and Silent Bob making an appearance in it. So yeah, not long to go now. Only 2 minutes. Only 2 minutes until we get going. A lot of more people here than I'm used to. So welcome everyone. Thank you for showing up. And like I said, if you are joining me a little bit later than usual, I am going to be downloading the Scream trailer so that I can show it to you in the highest quality possible. I don't want to stream it off of YouTube. I always get really not good frame rates playing that back, so I want to show it to you guys in the best resolution possible. Oh, we have Lupo Music saying that reminding me that I forgot that there was a Scream series, which that's right. I always forget that there was a TV show. But it looks like they're saying that number 1 is Scream 1, and the number 2 is Scream 2, number 3 is Scream 4, number 4 is Scream 3. So almost in the order that they were released. I think I mostly agree with that, except I would put Scream 4 ahead of Scream 2, as I said. And then we've got Dead Schooled saying that they go in the order of 1, 2, 4, and 3. That seems to be a popular ranking thus far. All right, we got 1 minute left, everyone. 1 minute to go. Ryan Reed is here saying 1, 2, 4, and 3. I think I'm being outnumbered here. You guys are all going the same thing, and I'm just over here being like 1, 4, 2, 3, like a sucker. And now I'm just refreshing like a madman. I really, really hope that they do link out to YouTube and it's not just like a Twitter release for this. The Twitter resolution is awful, and I just don't want to download a Twitter video and then show that. It wouldn't do justice to the trailer. I'm quite sure of that. If you're in the chat, let me know what you think is going to be happening in this movie. Any predictions for Scream? Let me know who you think the killer is going to be. My money is on Courtney Cox. I don't know why, but I just have a feeling that it's got to be one of the people from the original film. It's got to be the killer. All right, it's 9 o'clock. That means it should be trailer release time. Not here yet. Not here yet. Let's see if it's dropped on YouTube. Anything? Oh, look, there's a live stream. Funny, that is. And let's sort this by... Oh, no. Actually, that would probably work, but no, I want... Filtered by the last hour. Oh, Paramount Pictures Australia is doing a live thing of it. Really? So they're doing a premiere? Oh, Okay. Well, that doesn't really do us much good. That's strange. Okay, so that doesn't really do us any good. Let's check back over on the Twitter account, see what's going on. There it is. Okay, I'm just going to download this, everyone. If you want to go check it out for yourself and then come back for my reaction, please feel free. How can the site be unsupported? It's YouTube, you jerk. Once again, I don't want to show it in YouTube. It'll just look terrible. I know I am shooting myself in the foot because I had so many people in here ready to watch this thing, and now y'all are gone, but I'm committed to this bit. And if we do it quickly enough, we'll be going faster than they are in Australia, so that's a good thing. Oh, come on, you gotta download faster than that. To those of you joining in right now, I'm downloading the trailer now so I can show it at its best possible resolution. And apparently with the speed of my internet, and I'm probably not the only person doing this right now, it's taking about 4 minutes, although it looks like it's frozen. Let's try this again. That should honestly be downloading like in 3 seconds. Come on, little buddy. At this point, do I just abandon ship and stream it off of YouTube? It's right there. It's sitting right there, everybody. Yeah, fuck it. This is going too slow. Let's take a look at this gosh darn trailer, everybody. Are you ready? Are you ready for this? Oop. Ooh. Don't answer the phone. You know that's a bad idea. Oh, dang.
This isn't funny, Amber.
Would you like to play a game, Tara?
It looks like it's the same kitchen in the same house. Yeah.
Doors unlocked.
Ooh.
All doors locked.
Playing with some smart house type stuff.
Doors unlocked.
Not that far away.
Hello?
It's happening.
Hey, Sydney.
3 attacks so far.
Dewey.
You have a gun?
I'm Sydney Prescott. Of course I have a gun.
Something about this one just feels different.
He's a sneaky boy this time.
I know who you are.
I've been through this a lot. This is your life now, which means that whoever this is gonna keep coming for you. You ready for this? Never.
No, stop! Wait! There's certain rules to surviving.
Oh, Dewey steps in as Randy.
Attacks
That's kind
fall
of
on
cool.
people related to the original killers.
Whatever his link is to our past, it's pulled us all back here. And I won't sleep until he's in the ground.
Hello, Sydney. It's an honor.
That's kind of fascinating. So it appears that the killers in this are going to be going after the families of the original killers, being Matthew Lillard and Skeet Ulrich's characters from the first film. I can't imagine how much of a family they would actually have to be out there. I guess we're talking about like cousins for the most part, because it seemed like the people getting killed here are younger people. So why don't we just run through this again? why don't we just watch it again with fresh eyes? And I'll probably talk a bit more through this one. So it is pretty interesting that they are starting this out in the exact same house as where Drew Barrymore was killed in the first movie. You can kind of tell based on the kitchen. It seems like they've just never even updated it. Which speaks well to how well designed the first house was. It was kind of timeless in that way. Why wouldn't you look out the window first?
Doors unlocked. All doors locked.
I wonder if when they say that all the victims are related to the killers, or to the killers from the original film, if that also just means that they're focusing on people who, say, live in the same house where people were killed in the first movie. And that would mean that Tara here doesn't necessarily have to be related to anyone.
Hello?
It's happening. 3 attacks so far. Do you have a gun?
I'm Sidney Prescott. Of course I have a gun.
I do like this strung out Dewey.
Something about this one just feels different.
Also, now that Courtney Cox and David Arquette are divorced, I wonder if they're going to be kept separate in the film, or if they're going to be amicable.
I know who you are.
I've been through this a lot.
She is the
This is
expert.
your life now, which means that whoever this is gonna keep coming for you. You ready for this?
I have to imagine that one of either Sydney,
There's certain rules.
Courtney
to
Cox, or
surviving.
Dewey are going to
The
die
attacks
in
were
this
all on
one.
people
Gail
related
Weathers,
to the
excuse me.
original killers.
Whatever his link is to our past, it's pulled us all back here. And I won't sleep until he's in the ground.
So Dewey's fighting Ghostface in that shot.
Hello, Sydney. It's an honor.
So I can only imagine there are people now here who have already watched the trailer. Let me know your impressions in the chat. I'm going to start framing through this a little bit to see what we can see.
Prescott, of course I have a gun.
So we got Sydney being a badass.
I've been through
Where was
this.
the interesting stuff?
A lot.
There were shots here when they started going
This
quick
is your
that looked
life
like
now,
they
which
could
means that
be...
whoever this is gonna keep coming.
Okay, wait now. I want to see the line where they talk about who's getting actually murdered.
I've been through this.
Because the relation to the first film, it seems like they're drawing
This
very
is your
direct,
life now, which means that whoever this is gonna
direct
keep
line
coming
from
for
the
you.
first movie to this movie.
You ready for this?
There's certain
Certain rules to
rules
surviving.
to surviving.
Thank you, Dewey.
The attacks were
Okay, the attacks were all on people related to the original killers. So this, to me, could mean... Well, I guess, yeah, this is not as ambiguous as I initially thought it was going to be. Related to the original killers means that we're looking at people getting killed who are blood relatives to Skeet Ulrich and Matthew Lillard's characters. Unless this like idea of original killers is being expanded on. In the second movie, one of the killers is Billy's mother. So that could then be used to bring in killers from the other films, I would imagine. So we could be talking about much broader families than just the families of Stu and Billy. Yes, Stu and Billy.
all on people related to the original killers.
Oh, that's actually kind of funny because I think this guy here with the blonde hair, if I can get... Nope.
The
Come
attacks
on,
were
work
all on
with me.
people related to the original.
Yeah, this guy I think on the right is definitely meant to just look like Stu, which is kind of funny. Oh, goodness. And I wonder if this girl in the middle is meant to be like a Tatum stand-in, and maybe the guy on the left is meant to be more of a Billy. But this guy on the right is definitely Stu. Like, just look at that hair. Look at that hair. He's definitely Matthew Lillard from the first film.
Killers.
Whatever his link is to our past,
So Dewey's...
it's pulled us all back here. And
So
I won't
there's
sleep
looks like
until
there's going to
he's in the
be
ground.
a couple of different things happening in a hospital or in a school. He's the female cop's son. All right, thank you, Sith Lord Zilla. But like, I'm not wrong, right? Like, he definitely is being set up, whereas he looks a lot like Stu from the first film. And so, yeah, I just wanted to go back to here. So you see this woman running through what looks like a hospital. And we also see when Dewey is having his little, like, back and forth shot, reverse shot with Ghostface. So that's a hospital.
I won't sleep until he's in the ground.
This also appears to be a hospital. I think it says utilities closet right there. So it looks like we're also returning to Stu's house from the first film as well, because I believe that is the exterior that we see during this quick little flash of montages.
To our past.
Or this quick little flash of
Pull
shots.
us all back here. And I won't sleep until
Show me
he's
the
in
good stuff.
ground.
Yeah. So that is Stu's house from the first film, if my memory serves me correctly. So it seems we're returning to a lot of different locations from the first film. We've already seen Drew Barrymore's house, now that we've seen Stu's house. And then, like I said, we are getting stuff happening in a hospital, in a parking lot. Dewey takes a shot at somebody. Someone gets just burned alive. And it looks like Sidney goes into Stu's house. Now, what does everyone, to the people who are here, what does this say to you? The fact that the killer says it's an honor. Does that, are we meant to take from this that the person is like a fan, let's say, or someone who has like extensively studied the original Scream? And I know we're probably getting like a little too meta into it at that point. Although maybe we can't underestimate how meta these films could actually potentially get. Could the original killer just be, or not the original killer, but the killer in this film be essentially copying the first film, using it as a type of template? So in the way that the first film is kind of a meta narrative commentary on slasher films, on horror films in general, that this film is also going to be doing that, but using the first film and only the first film for the template. It seems like that might be the case. Scream. Alright, I'm going to watch it through one more time in full because it seems like we have a couple of people just dropping in here all the time. Maybe you're looking for reactions. See that we've got another comment in the chat. I think since they're going over sequels, it's probably an honor for them to face Sid since she's not a part of their plan in this film and not the target. Ah, that's an interesting take. I actually really like that. Their assumption is just that they're going to go out and kill people who are related to the original two killers, and that Sidney and Gale and Dewey would not get involved in that, because why would they? I think that maybe, I think that might be the case. I think that's a pretty good take. I could also see it going the other direction, where it was always their plan and they'd always hoped that Gale and Sidney and Dewey would show up. It would make their plan complete. And the fact that it's an honor kind of speaks to the fact that they revere Sidney and the original gang so much, and that this is what they had to do in order to get them into this place, to get them back to this town, to get them back into these houses, to get them back feeling terrified and running for their lives. So I think you could be right. I think I could be right. I don't really know for sure one way or the other. Obviously, there's a lot we still don't know about this film, but I think we're definitely going in the direction of reverence, as kind of a general theme or a modus operandi for this film. So let's just play through the trailer one more time. I'll give any thoughts on it if new things pop up. We do have to get on with the rest of the morning movie show, although we're getting so many people in here that are probably never been to this channel before. So maybe we just watch the Scream trailer for the next 3 hours. I don't know. That could be a way we do things. So do we think that Amber is, or not Amber, do we think that Tara is related to Stu or to Billy?
To play a game, Tara.
Man, Tara sure looks terrified.
Doors unlocked.
I also kind of hope that that is something that they play into a bit more in this film, is smart home technology, smart systems, and how you have, there's like an extra level of difficulty for actually trying to kill people in their own homes. I also wonder if that's where that scene ends, or if maybe we get the same kind of Drew Barrymore running out of the
Three
house,
attacks
getting
so
stabbed
far.
from behind type
Do you have
thing.
a gun?
I'm Sidney Prescott. Of course I have a gun.
Sydney always has a gun.
Something about this one just feels different.
That guy definitely looks like he's related to Billy in some way.
I know who you are.
I've been through this a lot. This is your life now, which means that whoever
And that's
this
actually
is
going to be an
keep
interesting
coming.
dynamic. Hold on, I'm just going to pause there for a second. So Samantha, presumably, and to be honest, I haven't looked at really the casting of this at all or who these characters are supposed to be. I'm just kind of cold watching this trailer and trying to piece it together. So I think the dynamic at play there is going to be that Samantha is related to either Billy or Stu in some way. And her relationship will probably have affected her life quite a bit, being the cousin or sister or what have you of two of the most famous killers in, Midwest America or wherever. And so she will, by proxy, have a kind of relationship with Sidney, even though they may never have met. And so now this person who is being stalked by someone who is killing everyone who's related to the original killers must now rely on the people that were hunted by Stu and Billy in the first film. So that will probably lead to an uneasy kind of tension between those people who are like, yo, if you just died, if you just let our siblings or our cousins or whatever get away with it in the first place, like this wouldn't be happening to us. I'm sure there's going to be tension of that sort in this film.
You ready for this?
There's certain rules to surviving.
The attacks were all on people related to the original killers.
But how are you
Whoever his
related?
link is to our past,
Tell me.
it's pulled us all back here. And I won't sleep until he's in the ground.
Hello, Sydney. It's an honor.
I'm really hoping that David Arquette, I wasn't meant to do that. I really hope David Arquette fights Ghostface with wrestling moves. He is now like a fairly legit professional wrestler. So if he could suplex Ghostface, that would be wonderful, filmmakers. If you could go back and do that reshoot, I would really appreciate it. Yeah, so we've gone through the trailer, I think 3 or 4 times now. Would love to hear some reactions in the chat if you've watched it already, what you think of it, if you're excited for it. I am feeling pretty great about this. This looks pretty fun to me. The way the trailer is cut, it's a bit faster, and it's more difficult to tell if a film is going to be good from a trailer that really just kind of hits you with beat after beat after beat after beat, because you don't really know how those beats are related to each other and how they exist in relationship to each other. And you really don't get a sense for the editing style of the actual film, because this is obviously, this trailer is edited in a very deliberate way. So we don't really know, or I can't really say for sure what the final film is going to look like, but if this trailer has been cut in a way that is true to how the film is actually going to look, then, and feel and move and paced, then I'm on board for it. I'm really hoping that it's not going to be like a 2.5 hour long epic. I really hope this kind of clocks in right around the time of the original Scream, which is about 95 minutes. And that would make for a wonderful January movie experience. And I think it's actually also, and just to speak to that point, the fact that the film is coming out in January is fairly significant in my mind. Like, typically in January, we do not get big releases. We will get a couple of Oscar films coming out wide. They would have been released obviously before the end of 2021 or in November, December, so they can be eligible for the Oscars, but then they come out wide. So that's usually what comes out in January, and then getting into February, with the exception of Black Panther a few years ago. February tends to be a bit of a dead month, but January, for a larger film that is meant to get a lot of buzz and a lot of attention, we don't really ever see those. And I'm guessing that the people behind Scream were just like, you know what? No one's got January. Let's just take it, and let's be the only big film that anyone cares about in January. And the way that they've run this kind of marketing campaign all the way through October. I imagine this isn't going to be the last we hear of the Scream film in this month. There could be more press releases, more photos, more things like that. In fact, one of the things I was going to start the morning movie show with, because I didn't know when the trailer was going to be released, was looking at some of the photos that were released yesterday. This would have been in the live stream yesterday, but unfortunately the live stream died on me. I couldn't do anything about it. But here we can see, once again, this hospital scene that I was talking about before. It looks like at least 2 attacks take place in a hospital, to the point that this film is going to be kind of referencing, say, Halloween 2 from 1980 or 1981. I doubt it, because most of that film takes place in a hospital, and I don't think we're going to be stuck in a hospital for much of this film. But something does happen in a hospital here, and we can't forget that. This image of Sydney and Gale seems to be taken almost directly from the trailer, because we can see that shot of the two of them being like, "Are you ready for this?" And Gale's like, "For this? Never." Like, that's essentially that exact same shot. This is Tara, who gets murdered right off the get. I'm guessing this is the police woman. I think we see her in the police car when it's driving away. This guy kind of looks like he's related to Randy to me. So I don't know. Is this trailer messing with us a little bit? I feel like it could be. But these are now, I think, all we're looking at here are potential victims. This is the guy who I feel like must be related to Stu in some way, shape, or form. Just look at those frosted tips. More potential victims. This guy gets just straight up murdered in the trailer. Actually, I don't think we see him murdered. We just see him get snuck up on. So maybe he lives. He's got a cool car, though. So this movie is scheduled to be released on January 14th. Oh, look at this wonderful synopsis that Slash Film gave us. A young woman who returns to her old hometown only to encounter horrific murder cases connected to a notorious masked serial killer. Yeah, that's Scream, all right. I don't think anyone will be confused by that. So that is basically it. For people who are here, do you want to watch the trailer one more time? You feeling like we've watched it enough and maybe it's time to move on to some other film news? I think, wow, yeah, there's been a lot of people dropping in. This has been a pretty successful start to the day. I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling like I'm having a great time. I wonder if there's anything else happening with the Scream Twitter account. Now that they've dropped the trailer, have they done anything else? Official synopsis. Way better than that Slash Film garbage we were just watching. 25 years after a streak of brutal murders shocked the quiet town of Woodsboro, a new killer has donned the Ghostface mask and begins targeting a group of teenagers to resurrect secrets from the town's deadly past. That's interesting. Resurrect secrets. So as we all remember, the original killings that happened in the first movie were all based around the fact that Sydney's mother was having an affair with Billy's father. And that all had to do with secrets. It was a secret affair. And I wonder if, with the connections being drawn between the first film and this film, if that is somehow going to be part of it. I wonder. So we got Brent in the chat saying, I just watched the full trailer. I immediately laughed at the landline and the fact that the killer is a cyber criminal able to override the house's locks. I mean, that's what you need to do, right? That's what you need to do. And don't laugh at the fact that they have a landline, because like my parents still have one. Old people have landlines still. They are a dying breed. And sometimes people just get them bundled in with their cable package, right? Oh wait, cable packages. That's also funny. But yeah, I think it's actually a good move for them to have the criminal be tech savvy in this way. It makes a lot of sense, and it kind of solves a problem that you have where, you know, a lot of people do have this level of home security with smart locks and all this stuff, cameras, etc. And you need someone who can easily circumvent that stuff. So to establish it in the trailer and to show this person as being someone who can just do whatever they want, whenever they want, and be able to hack in and do stuff is a good move. Is a good move in my mind. All right. So it seems like we are settling down on the amount of people watching this. If you stuck around the whole time, I appreciate you and welcome to the Cinemateq family. Typically on this show, I go through the movie news that is shaping the movie world around us. And today just happened to be the day when the new Scream trailer dropped. It dropped right when we started streaming. So I thought, hey, why not? Let's just watch the whole gosh darn thing a few times. So now that that's done, I'm going to kick over to the other movie news. And maybe we'll come back to the trailer in a little bit if people are demanding another viewing of it, or if they want some more of my impressions about it. But the movie morning show must continue. So as I said, this is initially what I was going to start off with. First was looking at all of these photos from Scream, but we just saw the trailer, so I guess we don't need to watch this anymore, or we don't need to look at this one anymore. But what we do probably need to talk about is the Eternals. A lot of movies about the Eternals, a lot of news about the Eternals got released yesterday. And good morning to you, CK. Good to see you in the chat. Did you see this? Did you see the Scream trailer yet? And if so, tell me what you thought about it. But yes, yesterday a lot of stuff about the Eternals came out, so we're going to go through some of it. Largely, I don't care about how movies fit into the MCU. To me, that's like fake movie news. Like, I just don't care about it. But in this case, it fits a lot into what I'm going to be talking about a little bit down the line. So, yeah, it's best just to discuss it now. So, the Eternals, according to this report from Vanessa Armstrong at Slash Film, stands alone, but will have huge implications for the future of the MCU. And I think that's probably something that they say for a lot of the standalone Marvel films. I'm guessing, I guess if you were to look back at Shang-Chi, it doesn't have huge implications for the MCU, but maybe it does. Maybe it does. Yeah, CK, you go ahead. You go mute me for a minute and go watch the Scream trailer and come back. That's totally cool. So let's talk about how this film stands completely alone. In an interview with Fandango, Zhao was asked whether Eternals ties into the multiverse narrative we've been building up in MCU shows like WandaVision, What If, and Loki, and what we expect to see in the films, Spider-Man: No Way Home and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. She replied, "The film completely stands alone. Completely. If you know half the universe disappeared and it came back, that's all you need to know to watch the film." So she's indicating that you basically just need to watch Infinity War and Endgame, which, everyone on the planet has watched, so you're going to be good to go. But Zhao didn't end her answer there. She went on to give us a hint about what Eternals does mean for the larger MCU, saying that what happens in this film will have huge implications on the future. What these huge implications are remains unknown, of course. Zhao isn't going to spoil her own movie. We do know, however, that Eternals expands what we know about those who wield significant power in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This film will be the first time we'll be introduced to both the Eternals, ancient aliens who have guided humanity over thousands of years, as well as the Deviants, the bad version, from humans' perspective at least, of the Eternals. We'll also see more of the Celestials, the alien gods who created both the Eternals and the Deviants. Star-Lord's dad, Ego, was a Celestial, but we haven't seen or heard much about them in the MCU beyond that. Given the amount of power these beings wield, it's not surprising that the movie about them will have huge implications for the MCU. We'll have to wait to watch the 2.5-hour movie, however, to find out the details on how. Make superhero movies short again. Holy shit. And I'm a No Time to Die apologist when it comes to its length, but I just gotta start wondering, is this too much? Is the movie that, I guess it makes sense because we're going to be introducing 7 new characters and they all have their own little backstories and everything, but does it really need to be 2.5 hours long? And the answer is, of course, yeah, maybe. It could need to be that long. And I think this is probably an issue that the MCU will get into going down the line, is that as you have these perhaps origin story movies or the need for these larger wrap-up movies like Endgame, the length of the film is being dictated by everything that you must accomplish as opposed to the best story that you can possibly tell. And so, yeah, there are probably just going to be some 3-hour MCU movies down the line because there needs to be, you know, the season finales, as it were, need to pack a lot in, and there's going to be part 1 and part 2s and all that kind of stuff. Is this a shame that they can't make movies that are directly focused on story as opposed to needing to fulfill the promise of the expanded universe, which means they have to become more bloated? And maybe that's one of the reasons why Shang-Chi was liked as much as it was when it came out, is that it was really just indebted to itself. And while it did set up things with post-credits and whatnot, there wasn't as much you needed to know about the broader universe. And so they didn't really need to care about it. And so I think with the Eternals having huge implications, that likely means that it needs to have way more in it. Maybe the way to think about this is that it's kind of a Civil War type film. It's not an Avengers film. It's not one of the big films, but it's on that same kind of level for importance in setting up things down the line. Even though, of course, Civil War didn't have to introduce brand new characters aside from, like, Spider-Man. Whew. So, I actually just cut myself off here to talk about what I was just talking about. This other article by Zach Sharf over at IndieWire headline saying, Chloe Zhao says shot length runs longer in Eternals than in other Marvel films. Excuse me, I was misreading this. So this is not talking about the actual length of the film. This is talking about the length of shots in the film. And this is actually an interesting thing for Chloe Zhao to state, that, and the implication here is that the movie will be more, what's the right word I want to use here? The movie will not be so quick to pick up shots and drop shots and just move. There will be a thoughtfulness to these shots, and it will linger. The camera will linger over certain things, and that's not really something that we get from Marvel films for the most part. CK saying they just watched the Scream trailer, way too much to talk about. Give me a point. Give me your number one point, and after I get done talking about the Eternals, maybe we start talking about the Scream trailer all over again. So let's just get into this article a little bit. No, IndieWire, I do not want your daily newsletter. Oh, Dory's saying A24-ish and let the camera linger and linger and linger. Yeah, could be. It could also be, and this, I say this because I'm working on a project for this channel that involves the first Halloween film. And so I watched like 3 Halloween films yesterday, and the camera in Halloween lingers quite a bit. It's very much, it's not, I wouldn't say it's not like dreamlike, and it's not kind of floating around like, say, Gus Van Sant's Elephant, but it does track a lot, and it prefers doing longer one-shots and following characters around than having it cut from like, I'm at the fridge, I'm at the door, I have a knife in me. Like, it's all just one sort of seamless shot, which is maybe what this is more implying. So let's read the article and see if that's actually the case. With the upcoming release of Eternals, Chloe Zhao is looking to shake up the visual language of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's already known the director rejected as much green screen usage as possible, preferring to shoot on location instead, and now Zhao revealed to Fandango that her shot length is far longer than what the MCU is used to seeing. Zhao is acclaimed for her immersive long takes. The director said Eternals might not have any shots that last as long as some of the one takes in Nomadland, but it was her goal to let shots breathe throughout the MCU epic. And you know that if people think that the film is boring, that's going to be the first thing that comes under fire in the reviews. Oh, this movie could have been 10 minutes shorter if we actually like didn't have all of these long shots going on forever. And whether or not that's a valid criticism, we're going to have to wait and see. But I'm going to guess that it won't be. It'll just be people being a little impatient. For this specific movie, what drew me to this movie and why they hired me, I think, is that the visual experience of this film must feel immersive, enough for the audience to believe that these superhero characters have walked the earth for 7,000 years. So to do that, there's what I like to call an anthropological way of capturing things. The cameras are very grounded and the movements are very natural. Shots are longer, we use wide-angle lenses and deep focus. It's about giving the audience the space and time to be able to explore what's within the frame and therefore come to her own conclusion of the relationship between the characters and the space they're in. Which makes sense for her style, especially since Nomadland, you know, is a documentary for the most part. It just happens to have Frances McDormand in it. And what she's referring to here is more typically thought of as something that you would put on the scale of realism versus formalism in film. It's like one of the older aspects of film theory. And what she is referring to, deep focus, wider lens, having the camera linger, is all related to aspects of realism in film. And on the other side of that, formalism would be something more akin to, say, the work of Oliver Stone, Natural Born Killers being an excellent example. Just shot after shot after shot after shot after shot, not letting anything linger. The construction of the film is very artificial, let's say. Whereas in a realist film, you're attempting to allow the film to be as close to how people experience reality as possible, which is why, the deep focus, the longer shots, because, these eyes don't edit. Our memory edits, but the eyes do not. So yeah, that's kind of how this sounds to me. And it makes sense considering her kind of like blending of documentary and fiction in previous films. Zhao added, we definitely linger with the camera, both in action sequences and if someone walking through a village or in space with the Celestials. We always try to see how long we can hold before we have to cut. When you have unlimited tools, it was very important to set limitations. So for us, we set up the language and then we follow it strictly. And part of that for us is to try and linger in every type of scene as much as possible for a film like this. All right, I think that's kind of what we need to gauge for this. Kind of makes me excited because, seeing a different style of Marvel film is kind of great. I'm excited for that. I would want to see that. And it'll be interesting to see what we eventually end up with when the film gets released in not that very much time. Probably, 3 weeks away? 4 weeks away? I already have my tickets to see it on the Thursday night, on the Thursday preview, so maybe I'll throw up a tiny little video, a short on this channel. Get subscribed so you can maybe get that if I do it. You can only rely on live streams on this channel. Everything else is a bonus. So let's go back to the chat. Looks like there's some more Scream chatter going on. CK saying, oh boy, reminds me of one of the best cinema experiences of my life, and it makes me feel old. Glad they didn't give away story points. Yet, it seems the only real story point they give away is that the killer is chasing after relatives of the original killers, Stu and Billy from the first film. Aside from that, we're not really given much. And it is kind of nice that in this film, in this trailer, when compared back to the Halloween Kills trailer, the first one that came out, that basically just showed us all of the kills. This one also does show us kills, but it's done in a much quicker way. And we don't really know if we're seeing the death of characters. We're mostly just seeing attacks on characters. And in the Scream films, that doesn't mean that you're dead. It probably means that you're dead, but it doesn't specifically mean that you're dead. So I feel like there's a bit more mystery that still remains that remains going into this. Whereas with Halloween Kills, which I'm seeing in 2 days, if you watch all the trailers, you pretty much know what's going on. You know what the deal is. You know who the kills are going to be. Unless there are so many more kills. I know, Rocco. I know. You didn't like those trailers either. If you're new here, my cat is very loud sometimes. And he also cut me off, and now I don't remember what I was saying. But yes, I do like the fact that there seems to be a bit more mystery in what is going on in the Scream trailer. We have Lamar, who I believe is new here. Welcome, Lamar, saying the Scream is back. I agree. This trailer has me excited. I feel like just based on this trailer alone, if I had to re-rank all of the Scream films, I would probably put this in a tie with Scream 4. But of course, doing that is ridiculous because we haven't seen the film yet. But the trailer as it's presented gives me high hopes. Very high hopes for the film succeeding. Dr. Derpy was just asking, is it any good? Yeah, I thought the trailer was great. I thought it was a great trailer. It sets things up. It gives us a mystery. It shows us a relative of Stu, probably, based on what he's wearing and how his hair is kind of frosted a bit, which I think is hilarious. And yeah, I'm feeling pretty good about it. CK saying the idea of a slow-paced Marvel film sounds intriguing. I agree. Speaking of Eternals and going back to that idea, The fast cutting was one point why I never made it past the first Avengers. Yeah, they didn't really slow down past that. So maybe this is a way of the way that Eternals is structured and the way it's going to be a bit of a slower film. It's a way of bringing in audiences who maybe have thought to themselves, well, I don't want to do Marvel anymore because all these Marvel films are very similar to each other and they all have very, fast-paced action or fast-paced cutting. And I just don't want that type of film in my life anymore. And Marvel will be able to point at Eternals and say, well, every Marvel fan is going to go see this regardless because that's just how Marvel fans work. But now we might be able to bring back some of the crowd who has kind of turned their noses up at Marvel films over the past few years. Whether or not that's a marketing tool that they employ or it's just kind of something they rely on word of mouth to accomplish, we'll have to wait and see. I'm sure that will end up being something that I talk about, how I feel like this stacks up against other Marvel films in terms of its construction and how different it is, if at all, because this could all be smoke and mirrors. Chloe Zhao could say that like the shots are longer, but if the average shot length in a Marvel film is 3 seconds and the average shot length in her film is 4 seconds, then like what has actually changed? Not much in that case. So we will have to wait and see. CK asking, did I enjoy Scream 4? I did. Although I will preface that by saying that I have only seen it once, and when I did see it, I was so high that I could barely sit down in the chair in the movie theater without like freaking out. I think it was actually one of the first times that they had installed like proper reclining chairs in a theater that I was in, which I guess was 10 years ago? I don't know if that's true or not, but I did have trouble operating a reclining chair in a movie theater because I had smoked that much weed, which is not something I do anymore, for clarity, probably because of incidents like that. So that is the person who is telling you that Scream 4 is real good, is someone who was so high in the theater that they could barely sit down. So maybe it's time for me to revisit it, and I likely will. As I mentioned a bit earlier in this, I'm currently working on a project where I'm going to be doing a kind of scene breakdown, scene analysis of a scene from the first Halloween film. And I'm planning for that to be a weekly series that comes out on the channel, coming out on Fridays or perhaps a earlier day if that's what it needs to be in order to appease the algorithm gods. But considering Scream will be coming out in January, it would only make sense for me to do at least one scene analysis for Scream, and perhaps that will also require a watch through of all of the other Scream films, which, not a bad gig, not a bad job if you can get it, So now that we've editorialized a bit, let's continue on with the next little bit of film news. It has to do with the Eternals. And this article has changed since I clicked on it because I don't remember this headline being anywhere. But let's take a look at it anyways. Eternals director Chloe Zhao drew inspiration from Tree of Life, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and Interstellar. And that could be where some of that longer shot length starts creeping in. So let's just go directly to her quote. I would say I pay tribute to many films and filmmakers that had great influence on me in this movie. It becomes fanfare for me, and she laughs. I try to let them inspire me in different parts of the movie because the film is so diverse visually. I could do a lot of different things. Particularly with the team at Marvel, our visual effects team, the action units, the design teams. We watched Terrence Malick films, particularly The Tree of Life and The New World. We watched The Revenant a lot and Interstellar a lot. We watched Blade Runner 2049 and a film called Samsara. We watched that a lot. Obviously, 2001: A Space Odyssey was very important too. So these were the films we had on repeat. And of course, there's many other things in my life that I've watched that sunk into it, which is pretty fascinating. I can almost see this film like visually coming together in my head based on these comments. Like the fact that they were watching Tree of Life, that says to me we're probably going to get some kind of like beginning of the universe or beginning of the galaxy type montage. 2001: A Space Odyssey probably has to do with spaceships arriving and how they look in outer space. The Revenant is an interesting one to reference. Maybe they go hunting in the Canadian wilderness. I would be interested to know why they were watching The Revenant. That would be one that I think I need a bit more explanation on. And Blade Runner 2049 as a visual reference, certainly for cinematography, is always a good idea. Whenever you can get Roger Deakins and examine how he sets up and shoots, yeah, that's always a good idea. Although from a story perspective, I'm not sure what Blade Runner 2049 would be putting towards this. It's not as clear to me as what 2001: A Space Odyssey or Tree of Life would be adding as influences to the story. And then we have another quote from Chloe Zhao about the unique challenge facing Eternals. Well, I think Marvel Studios has always worked with filmmakers who have very distinct voices, and that's why the films are different. They're not. But I think for this specific movie, what drew me to this movie and why they hired me, I think, is that the visual experience for this film must feel immersive. This is already a quote that we've actually looked at, so I'm not going to continue reading it. You can always just backpedal like 10 minutes, and that's where I talk about this. So, yeah, they want something immersive. This speaks to why the shots are going to be a bit longer, why it's going to have more of that documentary-esque style that Chloe Zhao brought to Nomadland. And it will feature influences ranging from Blade Runner 2049 to 2001: A Space Odyssey and Terrence Malick films. So, I don't know. Is this movie going to win an Oscar? Probably. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Whew. Let's just go back to the chat quickly. CK saying, I assume this is about Scream 4. I felt like I was the oldest person in theater and had an annoying crowd of teens around me. They didn't get a single inside reference. Boo, teens. I have to say that I don't really care about the Eternals, so I don't do most Marvel films, but I feel like they try too hard and market it as just being different. Could backfire. Yeah, potentially. Maybe one of them sleeps inside a horse. I guess that's the reference to The Revenant. Oh, yeah, maybe. That would be wild if that was the one thing that they drew from The Revenant. Someone was just sitting around in the writer's room being like, all right. We have a scene where Salma Hayek is sleeping in a horse. What can we look at for visual reference for Salma Hayek sleeping in a horse? And someone just like slaps the table and says, they did that in The Revenant. Oh, I hope not. I've seen enough people sleeping in horses to last me a long time. Very long time. So now, because CK says that they don't really like the Marvel films, we must continue talking about Marvel films. This was another big piece of news that dropped yesterday, casting news for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It appears that Will Poulter is to play Adam Warlock in the next installment of the Marvel franchise, which then confirms that Adam Warlock will be in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. He was teased at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and everyone assumed that he would be showing up or would be a part of Infinity War and Endgame and, you know, just things going on, but he was not. And so now, thanks to Justin Kroll over at Deadline, we have the exclusive news. After teasing his appearance at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, Adam Warlock looks ready to join the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the next installment of the hit franchise. Sources tell Deadline that Will Poulter has landed the role of Warlock in Marvel's anticipated sequel. James Gunn is returning to direct, with Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige producing. Like with any Marvel film, details behind the plot are being kept under lock and key. Production is expected to start in November, so that's not very far away. The character was first teased in a post-credit scene of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, which we just talked about. Oh, that's right. That person is played by Elizabeth Debicki. I forgot that she was in the MCU already. Sources say Gunn and execs began their lengthy search for the person who would play Warlock at the end of August, with Poulter meeting along with several other actors for the coveted part. As it is common with any major Marvel property, execs and Gunn took their time with the role, given how excited fans were when it was first teased. In the end, Poulter's test was too good to pass up. Best known for roles in The Revenant, and Detroit, Poulter has been busy on the TV front and most recently appeared in the acclaimed Amazon series The Underground Railroad, where I can only assume he played a racist person. We next can see him in Hulu's limited series Dope Sick. So that is the face of Adam Warlock. I am not so familiar with his work. I, of course, have seen him in The Revenant, but that came out in 2015, I believe, so we're already a few years past that. So So I haven't really seen anything that he's done recently. I have been meaning to watch Underground Railroad, but I have not gotten around to it yet. I really do need to, though. Gotta watch that. So yeah, I don't really have a lot of thoughts on this. And I know that CK doesn't care much either, since they're not really into the MCU. I think, you know, for someone who's going to be wearing like tons and tons of makeup and isn't even going to look like himself by the time it's all done, like I guess maybe we should just be happy that the character isn't going to be fully CGI. Because as far as I know, Adam Warlock is like gold. And I think that's kind of what they set up in the last movie, that he's just like pure gold. So this will be a wait and see thing, but if you have any thoughts, any comments on this, please let me know in the chat. Because I want to know what you guys think about everything, all the time. Except when I'm sleeping. Don't bother me when I'm sleeping. That's TJ time. Oh, CK saying he was second choice to play Pennywise in the remake of It. Yeah, I could see that. Makes you wonder if Mr. Sarsgaard, or one of the Sarsgaards, the one who played Pennywise, if he was second choice to play Adam Warlock. Maybe. Maybe they're just going to be two actors who are always, like, being put up for the same roles. So now, speaking of one golden boy, and moving on to not really another golden boy, but on this channel we talk a lot about awards season, and it appears that something that I thought was true of this award season is not actually true anymore. So for those of you who've been following along, the Golden Globes has had some trouble, to put it mildly. They've been accused of racism and not having a diverse enough group of people as being members of the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. And so in an effort to fix their public image, they tried and they started bringing in a more diverse group of journalists to join the HFPA. But that didn't really matter because I believe it was NBC who had the contract with them. The Golden Globes for 2022 were canceled. So they're not happening anymore. Except, according to Matt Grober, they are. And this is coming to us courtesy of Deadline. The Golden Globes are moving forward with plans to bestow honors this year. So my guess, before we even read this article, is that they're going to be letting everyone know who wins. They're just not going to be having a televised ceremony. Or maybe they will and it'll be live streamed. We'll see. Let's read this article. The Hollywood Foreign Press Association is moving forward with plans to bestow Golden Globe honors this movie season, even in the absence of the typical awards ceremony broadcast on NBC, Deadline has confirmed. A source said Monday that the HFPA plans to recognize the performances of 2021 to celebrate the great work of the industry this past year at the 79th Annual Golden Globes. No additional information or plans were disclosed, apart from the fact that the organization's 21 new members will be able to participate in voting on this year's honorees. And remember that the HFPA had a very small number of people who were already amongst it, like maybe 100, 200 at the most. So the addition of like anywhere from 20 to 10% or 10 to 20% of brand new people, that could effectively change how the HFPA votes. So it could mean that films that are not typically winning at the Golden Globes start winning at the Golden Globes. No additional information on, or wait, what? Have I just read the same thing? Yeah, probably. NBC said back in May that it would not broadcast the awards ceremony from the embattled organization in 2022 after an expose in the LA Times revealed that the HFPA counted not a single black person among its members, also examining claims of self-dealing and other ethical lapses within the organization. The revelation saw major companies, including Netflix and Amazon, join celebrities and industry publicists in cutting ties with the organization, which vowed to reform. So this was change that was forced on them, but it was change that needed to be done. We have CK saying it used to be close to 90 people. So the addition of like an extra 20 people is a pretty big injection of new voices and new votes into this organization. And then I guess there's a quote here from Comcast. We continue to believe that the HFPA is committed to meaningful reform. However, change of this magnitude takes time and work, and we feel strongly that the HFPA needs time to do it right. As such, NBC will not air the 2022 Golden Globes. Assuming the organization executes on its plan, we are hopeful we will be in a position to air the show in January 2023. So what I'm really interested here really interested in here is how they actually present these. If it's just a press release, that's boring, but it makes sense for them to do. Since this channel, since I specifically am in the business of doing live reactions to award shows, that's where a lot of the subscribers to this channel have come from already. And if you're not already subscribed to Cinemateq, I suggest you do, because there's lots of fun stuff we're doing on this channel. I hope that there is some sort of web broadcast. Like, even if it's just someone standing up at the front saying, here are the nominees, here's the winner, and that's it. There doesn't have to be anyone picking it up. There doesn't have to be anyone doing anything. But I would still prefer it to be a kind of ceremony, if that is at all possible. I would actually really appreciate that. As a content creator, I would appreciate that. They could just do things as easily as releasing a press release. And I believe there are a couple of other union type awards that do this. I can't remember if the Directors Guild has an award show or if they just send out a press release telling everyone who won. But I believe there are other organizations who are just like, here are the people who won this year. So maybe they do that. I hope not, though. So now, going to move on to some additional award season news. This is coming to us from Gold Derby. For those of you who know, Belfast won the People's Choice Award at the Toronto International Film Festival. So that means that it is, of course, the #1 film that everyone thinks is going to do really well at the Oscars now. The TIFF People's Choice Award has a fairly good reputation for picking the winner of the best film award, and subsequently people who are involved in that film also end up getting nominated. So now we have news that Belfast stars Caitriona, Balfe, and Jamie Dornan are going to be campaigned in the supporting races. So it has been decided that both of them didn't quite meet the criteria to get to a leading role nomination, or it was felt that even if they did, they would probably have a better chance of winning in the supporting category as opposed to the lead category. Especially for the women this year, the leading category is going to be quite difficult. You already have Jessica Chastain and Kristen Stewart laying claim to it, although whether or not Jessica Chastain is able to keep the momentum going, I think everyone is now thinking of Kristen Stewart as the front runner, but that is beside the point, because we should just read this article a little bit. And this is coming to us from Christopher Rosen from Gold Derby. In what should be a boon for their respective award fates, not to mention the film itself, Belfast stars Caitriona, Balfe, and Jamie Dornan will campaign in the supporting actress and actor races, respectively, at the 2022 Oscars. The news, long speculated about, was revealed by Variety on Monday afternoon. Focus Features, which is set to distribute Belfast in theaters starting November 12th, later confirmed the news to Gold Derby. Let's see if there's anything in here on just any kind of further information that could give us some color to this story. The placement of Balfe and Dornan in the supporting actor categories puts them on the same proverbial ballot as Belfast co-stars Judi Dench and Ciarán Hinds. The veterans play Buddy's paternal grandparents in the film, and the expectation has been that both could factor in the Oscar race as well. The Belfast ensemble was so well received on Telluride, The Hollywood Reporter Awards editor Scott Feinberg speculated that the film could land nominations for Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, and Best Supporting Actress. With the category placement, now the prediction becomes moot, however. It does mean, though, that this film stands a very good chance of winning the Ensemble Award at the Screen Actors Guild Award, which is not so much a predictor, but it is a nice feather to have in your cap as you move forward. With the headline stars now set as supporting contenders, Hill is officially the only Belfast actor in a lead category. He'll campaign for Best Actor. Oh, really? Fascinating. Balfe and Dornan enter supporting actor races that appear wide open at the moment, and it's expected they'll each rise up the Gold Derby prediction charts now that their placement has been confirmed. At the moment, Ann Dowd leads the Best Supporting Actress category, while Richard Jenkins is at the front of the Best Supporting Actor category, but unlike those stars who appear respectively in Mass and The Humans, Balfe and Dornan have added heft for starting in a Best Picture frontrunner. So there is that to keep in mind. Cool. So that's just a bit of news. I don't really have much to say about this. It does make a lot of sense because, as this article pointed out, the best supporting categories are kind of still up in the air, whereas the best leading categories are a bit more solidified at this point. So smart moves all around. So CK saying, feels like Judas and the Black Messiah last year, a movie without a lead apparently. And letting us know that Christopher Rosen is great. I think what this is telling us is that the Belfast lead is actually Jude Hill. And that he will be put up as the best supporting or as the best lead actor. I had assumed, and I have not seen Belfast yet, I had assumed that Jamie Dornan or Balfe were the leads, and that it was kind of being done like they're co-stars and the film's about them, but they're supporting each other, therefore they are supporting roles. It was kind of a bit of trickery in order to get them out of the best lead actor category, but it appears that Jude Hill is actually the best lead actor. Or the one that will be put forward is for best lead actor from this film. So just gonna go check in the chat already. CK saying that is already a subscriber. That's what you need to do, people that are here. Get subscribed. Be like CK. It feels, and this has to do with the Golden Globe story we were just talking about. I feel that has more to do with rebuilding their reputation, and no major star would really know what to do with winning a Globe right now. Yeah. I think that's pretty true. But at the same time, if you're embroiled in awards season and you need to build momentum for a nomination, you might not want to turn down the Golden Globe. You know, maybe you just send out a tweet being like, "Hey, thanks HFPA for doing this. Keep doing, your great Reformation works, and maybe we'll be able to do this in person next year," or something like that. Hollywood is such that as long as you're making the effort, most people will remain magnanimous towards you. They will not shit on you forever as long as you're making the effort. With the exception, of course, to Harvey Weinstein, who can rot in hell. Whew. All right, everybody. We've been going on for an hour here, but it feels like I've been streaming for 3. And I don't mean because I have not been liking what's going on. There's just been so much. There's been so much happening. And this has been one of the larger audiences that we've had all throughout. So I feel like maybe I should just put Scream in the title of every live stream that I do. So let's move on to the next little bit of film news. Now we're getting more into some industry-related business, so we'll kind of breeze through this. But it has been announced, and this is courtesy of Anthony D'Alessandro over at Deadline, that Alan Horn is retiring as Chief Creative Officer of Disney Studios Content. And I will just pause to make CK even more jealous of my cup. I can only assume because you're saying that because you want one of these wonderful TIFF mugs. You can get them online. TIFF has an online store. I forget where you live. I think it might be Germany. But you can get it shipped out there, I'm sure. So let's get into this article a bit. It is truly the end of another era at Walt Disney Studios. Doesn't it always seem to be the end of an era somewhere? In a move that many were expecting, Alan Horn, 78, is retiring as Chief Creative Officer of Disney Studios Content, effective December 31st. It will end a 9-year run at the Burbank CA lot in an executive TV and motion picture industry career that has spanned close to 50 years. So I wanted to bring this up because, as we've seen over the last few weeks, there has been a lot of okay, there is data still going. Sorry, I just got a no data alert from my streaming thing. So that was scary for me. But over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot of changing of the old guard happening in Hollywood, specifically at Paramount, but it seems like it's now been branching out and going into other studios. And this is another example of that, where someone from the old guard of Hollywood, someone who would have been around during the new Hollywood time periods, in the late 60s going into the 70s, 80s, 90s, etc. Those types are now leaving the industry. Leaving or getting kicked out of the industry. The news comes in the long wake of Bob Iger's retirement from Disney, which will end at the end of this year. Iger currently serves as executive chairman after handing over CEO reins to Bob Chapek in February 2020. So once again, Bob Iger, another example of the kind of Hollywood old guard stepping out of the way. Back in December, Alan Bergman was named Disney Studios content chairman after co-running the division with Horn as co-chairman since May 2019, as the media conglomerate made a commitment to spend $14 billion to $16 billion over the next 4 years. Horn remained on as CCO at the time, shedding some of his duties to zero on the studio's creative pipeline. Horn, similar to former NBC Universal Vice Chairman Ron Meyer, is renowned for his relationship with filmmaking talent and smoothing out feature productions. He is known for his gracious and astute approach to film production situations. He was unceremoniously cut loose from Warner Brothers as president of chief operating officer in 2011, after a 12-year run with that Burbank CA studio after such hits as the Harry Potter franchise. So it seems like the rest of this is more talking about Horn's career, but here we go. Here's what I was looking at. Here's what I was looking for. I understand there aren't plans to replace Horn, particularly given the autonomy of the creative heads at Disney's various labels, i.e. Kevin Feige at Marvel, Kathleen Kennedy at Lucasfilm, Walt Disney Studios President of Production Sean Bailey, President of 20th Century Studios Steve Isbell, Chief Creative Officer Pixel Animation Studios Peter Docker, CCO of Walt Disney Animation Studios, who's Jennifer Lee, President Disney Theatrical Productions, who is Thomas Schumacher, and other people. All will continue to report to Bergman, who we just mentioned previously. So it seems like this is the end of this role, and Horn will be the last person to be in it. So I think, and this once again just goes into his background, some more quotes. So I don't think we need to get further into this, but it appears that the changing of the old guard is continuing in Hollywood, and from the sounds of it, Disney is quite happy to let the studio heads like Kevin Feige and Kathleen Kennedy just keep doing what they're doing and not needing to give them that further amount of oversight that Horn's position entailed. So with that said, let's go back to the chat. Yes, TK is from Germany. Nice. And you always try to check in here daily, but I'm a Scream fan since day one. Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate you trying to check in every day. I know that with people's schedules being the way that they are, you can't always commit to a 3-hour live stream. And you're right, ordering it online just isn't the same, but it would still get to you eventually. I guess then the only solution is for you to come to the Toronto International Film Festival one year, and then you can buy one. Or just come to Toronto whenever, and then the TIFF store will be open for you. So there you go. All you have to do to get this $12 mug is fly halfway across the world. Okay. Let us continue on with the film news. And this one is related to Disney and is also related to Halloween, weirdly. David Gordon Green, who is the current director of the Halloween trilogy, which will be releasing Halloween Kills in but 2 days, and Halloween Ends probably at some point in 2022 or 2023. David Gordon Green is set to direct a movie about Walt Disney's building of Disneyland. So I guess we're going to get a movie about Walt Disney, like going through the plans of building Disneyland and all this kind of stuff, which is like, yay? I don't know. I'm skeptical. This is coming to us from Anthony D'Alessandro over at Deadline. To quote the article, Deadline has learned that David Gordon Green is set to direct a movie at Disney Studios for Disney Plus about Walt Disney's journey to building Disneyland, the happiest place on Earth. The news comes days before Gordon's Halloween Kills opens, the sequel to the highest-grossing Halloween movie of all time. It was released in 2018 and racked up $255.6 million. I feel like if you adjust for inflation, the original makes more money than this, but that's beside the point. Looks like they've got a writer, and apologies, this last name is not something that I feel confident in saying. Evan Spilotopoulos, who has a history writing on such Disney projects as The Jungle Book 2, Pooh's Halamphant movie, Tinkerbell and the Lost Treasure, and the $1.2 billion grossing live-action reboot of Beauty and the Beast, is set to write. Groan in the chat if you feel like groaning. Let's see, we also talk about some other things that the writer has written and who's going to be overseeing this, some information about when Disneyland was opened. Oof. All right. So it doesn't appear to be much in here about what this movie will actually be about, just that they are making it and that David Gordon Green is directing it. CK is wondering if Tom Hanks is playing Disney again. I don't think so, but they do mention that film down here. The most recent movie from Disney about its maestro was 2013 Saving Mr. Banks, in which Tom Hanks played Walt Disney in his pursuit of the Mary Poppins IP from reluctant IP author P.I. Travers, portrayed by Emma Thompson. The pick was nominated for an Oscar and grossed close to $118 million worldwide. So yeah, I don't know. Also, Walt Disney is like a fairly controversial figure these days. So I don't know why we're doing this. Like, is the history of Walt Disneyland so fraught with drama that it would make an interesting film? Or is this just Disney trying to cement its own legacy, or trying to have a hand in writing its own legacy? Probably the third one, or the second one. The last one that I said. But if David Gordon Green's directing, that's... yeah, it could be interesting. Especially if he does it as a horror film. And he won't do it as a horror film. But if he did it as a horror film, that could be fun. Moving on to the next little piece of news. This is casting news that I'm kind of excited about. Stephan Lang, Bruce Dern, and Shane West are set to topline a horror thriller called Mid-Century. For those of you who don't know, Bruce Dern is, of course, famous actor Bruce Dern, the father of Laura Dern. Stephan Lang was the military dude in Avatar, but also more importantly played the blind man in both Don't Breathe movies. I haven't seen the second one, but of course, the first Don't Breathe is a great horror film. And Shane West, who is listed here as being a member of the Gotham cast, although I feel like he's known for other stuff. Oh, maybe not. What are you known for? He was in Nikita. He plays Bane in Batman. That's wild. He's got to be in other stuff. What do I know you from? He was in Ocean's 11 and he played himself. Weird. What We Do Is Secret. He was in The Lodger, but that's not The Lodger I'm thinking of. Red Sky? No. Awakening the Zodiac? No. All right, it turns out I have no idea who Shane West is. But as soon as I saw his name, I was like, I know this guy. He was in one episode of Sliders, so that's probably what it was. I will always recognize people who are in one episode of Sliders. It's also kind of funny because as soon as I see that someone was in Sliders, I'm just like, oh, they were Canadian. That's fun. That's fun. So you can just go back to the article. The social commentary horror thriller explores the dark side of the American aesthetic, which is really something that all American horror films do in different ways. In the film, Lang plays an occult-obsessed architect of mid-century modern homes who haunts his masterpieces long after a grisly death. Okay, so Lang is playing a ghost. Yes. Dern appears as Lang's mentor in The Supernatural, and Hay is the housewife forever trapped in her home after perishing at the hands of her husband. West and Gilligan star as a modern-day couple vacationing in the glass home who find the ghosts of the past are very much present and have a sinister plan for them. Dun dun dun. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. I don't know, I was kind of hoping that Stephan Lang wouldn't be a ghost. But maybe if both Stephan Lang and Bruce Dern are ghost buddies in a house, that could be kind of fun. Ghost Bruce Dern and ghost Stephan Lang just like hanging out, scaring people. That could be a fun movie. Let's see. Brent saying, oh yeah, there's that scene at the beginning of Ocean's 11 with the celebrities playing poker. Is he a celebrity though? I mean, yeah, I guess in that instance he would be. But when I think of that opening, I think of like actual celebrities. Like, who was this guy in 2001 to deserve that kind of recognition? And I'm just not going to check. It was probably because he was in ER. He was about to be in ER. Who knows? Who knows? Oh, and CK saying, going back to the Walt Disney film that Tom Hanks did, that seeing Tom Hanks and Emma Thompson act together was a marvel. I haven't seen the film, so maybe that's something that's worth checking out. But as far as this story goes, and this came to us from Valerie Complex over at Deadline, I am still interested in this movie, even though Stephan Lang apparently is going to be a ghost. And for whatever reason, I don't want Stephan Lang to be a ghost. I don't want him to be a ghost in these movies. I want him to be like a badass guy, or like a guy who solves a mystery. I don't want him to be a ghost. I guess what I'm saying is that I want him to be the center of the film. I don't want him to be like a supporting spooky thing. Now let's go into a bit more casting news, a bit more new film news. Eugenio, Derbez, and Eva Longoria lead cast of Aristotle and Dante film adaptation. H. Alberto to write and direct. And the main reason why I brought this up is that the title, Aristotle and Dante, make me think that this is going to somehow be about the Dante who wrote Dante's Inferno. And if that is somehow the case, I will watch this, because I actually really enjoyed reading the Divine Comedy when I was but a wee lad. Specifically, the Inferno sections of it. But let's find out a bit more information about this together. Eugenio, Derbez, Eva Longoria, Max Paleo, and Reese Gonzalez, Veronica Falcon, Elizabeth Gomez, Luna Blas, and Kevin Alejandro have been set to star in Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. That's the full name? A feature film adaptation of Benjamin Aller Sands' youth young adult novel. That was a mouthful. Atiche Alberto wrote the script and will make her directorial debut on The Pick, which is being financed and produced by Limelight alongside 3 Pass Studios and Big Swing Productions in association with companies. The film counts Derbez, Kyra Sedgwick, and Lin-Manuel Miranda among its producers. Interesting. Aristotle and Dante, originally published in 2014, centers on the friendship between Aristotle Ari Mendoza, to be played by Paleo, and Dante Quintana, who is being played by Gonzalez, 2 Mexican-American boys on the cusp of manhood who form a life-changing bond after a chance meeting at an El Paso pool in the summer of 1987. Gosh darn it. It's not about the guy who wrote Inferno. Boo. Boo this movie. I'm kidding. I now know nothing about it, but sounds like it could be interesting. Alberto's writing credits include the HBO Max drama series Duster from J.J. Abrams, and she also wrote for Apple TV's Plus's Little America. Okay. So still not a lot of information here. It's just this. The rest of the article is mostly just these people also did this. So based on all of this, I'm good. Like this seems all right. And we'll just have to wait and see what the final product is. But I guess the hopes and dreams that I had for it being a film about the guy who wrote Dante's Inferno is quashed once again. I will now have to go back and rewatch that Da Vinci Code movie called Inferno to get my fix. Which is a bad way to get your fix. All right, more industry casting news. Paramount. And this is coming to us from Patrick Heaps over at Deadline. Paramount has acquired rights to a Guy Pearce thriller called The Infernal Machine. To quote the article, and the reason I'm talking about this is because Guy Pearce is dope, and I love watching him in pretty much everything. Paramount said Monday that it has acquired worldwide distribution rights to The Infernal Machine, a psychological drama thriller written and directed by Andrew Hunt and starring Guy Pearce. And before I go into this, if you guys can remind me what The Infernal Machine refers to, because it's a very specific thing, and I forget what it is, but I also want to read this article, so someone else will let me know what The Infernal Machine is. The Pick just wrapped filming at MovieBox Studios facilities in the Algarve region of Portugal, which doubled for the U.S. southwest border and is now in post-production. Pearce plays Bruce Cogburn, a reclusive and controversial author who is drawn out of hiding by an obsessive fan. What ensues is a labyrinthine and treacherous game, creating a web of lies and manipulation that ultimately reveals the true meaning of the Infernal Machine. Alice Eve, Alex Pettifer, and Jeremy Davies also star. I have not seen Alice Eve in a film since Star Trek Into Darkness. What has she been up to? And I'll just go back to the chat. Inferno, like the Dan Brown thing. Yes, like the Dan Brown thing. Alice Eve. Best known for She's Out of My League, Men in Black 3, Star Trek Into Darkness. But what has she done since Star Trek Into Darkness? Oh, she's actually been in quite a few things. Night of the Museum, Dirty Weekend, Criminal, Wait, this is a film? Okay. Misconduct. Man, a lot of films here that I am not aware of, which is not to say whether or not they're good or bad. It's just stuff that hasn't been on my radar. Based on some of these posters, I'm going to say these are more lower budget fare, which once again, doesn't mean they're good or bad. Just means they've been off my radar. And it looks like she was also in Bombshell. I do not remember her being in that film. She plays Ainsley Eckert. She's also in this upcoming sci-fi film called Warning and the Queen Mary. And she has a starring role in that. Also looks like she's been doing appearances in TV here and then. Okay. She was in the Black Mirror episode. That's cool. She kind of dropped off the map for me after Star Trek Into Darkness. Looks like we got some more information here about producers and the whatnot, so I'm not going to get too far into that. But this is another one that I wanted to point out because I'm very much a fan of Guy Pearce. We got CK here saying that obsessive fan always immediately makes me think about ankles, like the body part, or is there a film you're referring? So when I hear about obsessive fans, my mind automatically goes to the Wesley Snipes Robert De Niro film The Fan from like the 90s. Where Wesley Snipes plays like a baseball player and Robert De Niro is his biggest fan, who then turns into a stalker. And that to me is kind of like it was probably the first movie I ever saw where the obsessive fan trope was used, which to me is why it's so prominent in my head and why it's so prevalent in my head when I think about movies like this. I haven't watched it in a very long time either, so I have no idea if it's actually worth it. It's true, CK. You are going wild in the chat, but it's good. We need chat. Chat helps. I don't know if you guys knew this or not, but actually, maybe I'll just bring this in here. Let's go. I'll give you a little bit of a behind the scenes look into what my life is like when I'm on live stream. So I get to see like all of the analytics as it's happening. I get to see like average watch time and playbacks, but also chat rate is one of the things that I get to see. So I get to know like on average how often people are chatting. And since this live stream has been going on for like almost an hour and a half now, obviously the chat rate is going to be below 1 because people aren't chatting at a rate of like 1 per minute. And I think the first, kind of 20 minutes of the stream kind of sunk that because a lot of our regulars weren't here and it was people coming in looking for Scream reactions and things like this. But yeah, this is what I see. Here are the settings that I use. Oh God. No, yeah, you didn't see my key, so that's fine. I didn't just reveal very personal information, so it's fine. It's all good. And then if you're ever wondering why I'm so concerned about stream status and things like that, apparently it's poor. YouTube is telling me it's poor, but I'm looking at the preview and it looks fine to me. So please let me know if this looks weird or bad. Clearly I'll have to look at the keyframe status. But yeah, that's what I'm also doing while I'm talking to you about movies. I'm keeping an eye on all of that. Apparently, the Infernal Machine can refer to multiple things, but what multiple things? Also, don't get ahead of me. The Infernal, because I think like Infernal means something that is... Oh, I'm probably thinking of Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. Infernal Machine may refer to a homemade gun used to assassinate Louis Philippe I, a 19th century term for naval mine, for a naval mine. Oh. The machine Infernal used to be used in the plot of the Rue Saint-Nestif against Napoleon. Oh, there's a movie called Infernal Machine from 1933. That might be what I'm thinking of. It's a pre-code thriller, which means it's a good one. Plot: a bomb planted on board a ship may go off at any moment. So that seems to suggest the naval bomb thing. It's also a play. It's also an episode of Space 1999. And it's also an album by Darcy James's Gru's Secret Society. Well then. So many things that it could be. And so little of them I'm actually interested in. So now we're kind of out of casting news and films being purchased kind of news. Now it's time for, that's interesting film news. Apparently, the shooting of Matrix 4, Matrix Resurrections, was so prevalent all over San Francisco that there were conflicts with the filming of Venom 2. And from one of the things I read, it also kind of sounds like maybe, just maybe, you can see them filming Matrix 4 in Venom 2, which is weird. But we're going to get into this article and find out what the truth of the matter actually is. To quote the headline from Zach Shar for IndieWire, Venom 2 was forced to cut filming scenes after Matrix 4 set took over San Francisco. Helicopters from Matrix Resurrections made their way into Venom Let There Be Carnage. So you can see helicopters from Matrix 4 in Venom 2. That's pretty interesting. Get out of here, IndieWire. I don't want your daily newsletter. It turns out Tom Hardy's Venom is no match for the return of the Matrix franchise. Speaking to Screen Rant, Venom Let There Be Carnage location manager Christopher Cusack revealed that filming Hardy's comic book sequel had to be changed after Lana Wachowski's The Matrix Resurrections set up shop in San Francisco. Both Hollywood tentpoles began filming in San Francisco in February 2020 before the pandemic. Lots of stuff impacted filming, Cusack said. A lot of our driving shots went away because the Matrix controlled all of downtown. We ended up moving a stunt up onto the top of the parking garage because we couldn't get the areas we wanted because of the Matrix. But we would have been there first, it probably would have gone the other way. But if we would have been there first, it probably would have gone the other way. The Matrix Resurrections was so dominant in San Francisco that filming of the movie even found its way into Venom 2, into the theatrical cut. During a fight between Venom and Carnage that takes place on the Coit Tower, helicopters are seen flying in the skies. Those helicopters were being used to film The Matrix Resurrections. Oh my god. As Cusack revealed, the helicopters were actually on the Matrix movie. The Matrix was filming at the same time, so we were catching part of their activity on camera. And what's amazing about that is that they didn't like take them out in post. Like they could have removed them. When you have like, what is his name? Carnage and Venom fighting, and that's a mostly CGI fight, just take it out. Just take out the helicopters. But they left it in, so I don't know, maybe they thought this would be a nice little bit of publicity and they left it in for that reason. So that's kind of fun, honestly. That's pretty cool. These you don't really hear about that a lot, eh? Like two films competing for space in a city, because I think we're pretty used to films being shot in Los Angeles and films being shot in New York, and like everyone shoots in these cities and they're always probably getting in each other's way. But in this case, we actually get to hear about it because both of these films are being shot in San Francisco, which is not used so much, especially for big tentpoles. The other interesting thing here is that I think one of the other reasons we don't hear a lot about films getting in each other's way is that so many big blockbuster films are shot, in studios. And of course they're not going to get in each other's way, because when you're doing a studio shoot, you book a studio for however many months you need, and then you just shoot there for however many months you have it booked for. So you know exactly what you're getting done and you know what you're able to do. So there's not going to be like an issue where one film is like pushing another one out, because all of these schedules are known to the people who are involved. So yeah, weird, strange even that this would happen. And it sounds like, I guess, everything turned out for the best. Although now I'm wondering what Venom 2 would be like if it had more car chases. I don't know. Is that why the movie only ended up being 90 minutes long? Do we have the Matrix Resurrections to thank for that? Maybe. CK saying a lot of Matrix 4 was shot where I live. Very nice. Very nice. I wish I could say that more like well-known films are shot in Toronto. There's always stuff being shot here, but it's mostly television. Except when Guillermo del Toro is in town, like doing stuff. But he shoots a lot in studio as well. So not a lot of Toronto gets into films. Cosmopolis is probably the most Toronto of any film I've ever seen, even though they're trying to play it off like New York. It is so Toronto. But yeah, it's mostly TV shows here from what I see anyways. All right, so there's still some stuff to talk about. I also need to do a check-in on the film news to see if anything has broken in the last hour and a half that I would want to discuss with everyone. So I'm going to take a quick break. I'm going to put some more water in this tea mug. And it never felt more appropriate than today to say this. I'll be right back.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. I'll be right back. You understand?
Back in a minute.
Be right back.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Dan.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. Don't get dressed.
I'll be back.
Be right back with a search warrant.
I'm coming right back.
I'll be right back.
Hey, buddy, you pay for the drinks. I gotta go to the John. I'll be right back. Gonna introduce Mr. Thick Dick to Mr. Urinal Cake.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. I'll be right back. You understand?
Back in a minute.
Be right back. I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Dan.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. Don't get dressed.
I'll be back.
Be right back with a search warrant.
I'm coming right back.
I'll be right back.
Hey, buddy, you pay for the drinks. I gotta go to the John. I'll be right back. Gonna introduce Mr. Thick Dick to Mr. Urinal Cake.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. I'll be right back. You understand?
Back in a minute.
Be right back. I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Dan.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. Don't get dressed.
I'll be back.
Be right back with a search warrant.
I'm coming right back.
I'll be right back.
Hey, buddy, you pay for the drinks. I gotta go to the John. I'll be right back. Gonna introduce Mr. Thick Dick to Mr. Urinal Cake.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. I'll be right back. You understand?
Back in a minute.
Be right back. I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Dan.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. Don't get dressed.
I'll be back.
Be right back with a search warrant.
I'm coming right back.
I'll be right back.
Hey, buddy, you pay for the drinks. I gotta go to the John. I'll be right back. Gonna introduce Mr. Thick Dick to Mr. Urinal Cake.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. I'll be right back. You understand?
Back in a minute.
Be right back. I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
I'll be right back. I'll be right back. Dan.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I'll be right back.
And we are back, dear cinephiles. Hello, and thank you for sticking around. So, I went through and got all of the latest film news. I checked it out. I saw if there was anything that I thought would be interesting to look at, and I found something wonderful. I found something that made me sad. And both of these things are the same thing. So, let us get a little bit further into this both fun but sad news. Oh boy. All right. So apparently, in The Last Duel, which is coming out this weekend, I believe, it could have featured Matt Damon and Ben Affleck kissing, but Ridley Scott cut it. This is why I am sad. I would have very much enjoyed seeing those two just make out in a movie. That would have been a lot of fun. So let's just get into this article a little bit more. And what I'm kind of most interested here based on this headline is they said here that Ridley Scott cut it. But did he cut it from the script or did he cut it from the edit? That is what I want to know. Because if this kiss exists, if it is on film somewhere, and it could be included as, say, like a Blu-ray special feature, maybe something that goes up as promotional material when the film is released, maybe. That could work. Also, it says to me that Ridley Scott doesn't give a shit about this movie winning Oscars, because if you want to win an Oscar, you have Ben Affleck and Matt Damon kiss. It's never worked before, but we've also never tried it before. All right, to quote the article from Joshua Meyer and /film, You've heard of Batfleck and Benifer, but what about Mattfleck? Ben Affleck and Matt Damon are set to reunite on screen this Friday in Ridley Scott's The Last Duel, and in another life, it seems we would have seen their characters kissing. Affleck and Damon go back a long way, having first met and studied drama together back in high school. Though they appeared in other films together pre-1997, they had their big breakout that year in Good Will Hunting, which they starred in and co-wrote, and which earned them both an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. They also co-starred as the fallen angels Bartleby and Loki in Kevin Smith's Dogma in 1999, years before Damon ever cameoed as an Asgardian actor playing Loki in Thor Ragnarok. Oh yeah, it's not the first time he's played Loki before. So let's see if we can get in here to anything that tells us anything about what's actually going on. Entertainment Weekly reports that there was a scene in the movie where Damon's character greets Ben Affleck with a ceremonial kiss on the mouth. According to Affleck, Scott thought it would be distracting and his instincts were pretty good, so the scene was excised before they ever filmed it. So it was never actually filmed, and it was just a friendly hello kiss. It wasn't an actual, like, make-out kiss. Come on, Ridley. He is right, though. It would be distracting. Considering I clicked on this article simply because I wanted to learn more about how this kiss was not going to be in my life, he's right. It would have been distracting. And this article then goes on to talk about that time Matt Damon got in a little bit of hot water for F-slur for homosexual controversy. Maybe we should read into that a little bit. The word that my daughter calls the F-slur for a homosexual was commonly used when I was a kid with a different application. I made a joke months ago and got a tryst from my daughter. She left the table and I said, "Come on, that's a joke. I say it in the movie Stuck on You." And that's when Matt Damon got piled on by everyone and was just told, hey, by the way, homophobic slurs are still bad. It doesn't matter if you said them when you were a kid or when you said them in a movie, Mr. Damon. So I hope that clears up anyone who's confused about that in the past. So yeah, this looks like a big old nothing burger of news. I'm sorry, everybody. Usually I can ferret this stuff out a lot better than this, but I was just so intrigued. I was so intrigued. Maybe I just desperately want them to make out with each other. Maybe they desperately need to make out with each other, you know? Like, maybe it would help them somehow. Maybe. So now we're going to start getting into different types of news. Not exactly late-breaking stuff, but things that I thought were kind of interesting or just stuff that I wanted to surface to everybody. So if there's anything in particular that you want me to talk about, now is a great time to do it, because this is, this is not necessarily late-breaking industry news, but I think it's still important. This one in particular. So this article comes to us from IndieWire, written by Chris Lindahl. It concerns the Afghanistan Film Archives and what will the Taliban do with them. And this is something that is a constant cause of concern for people who live in countries that are not particularly stable. Many countries all over the world have their own film archive, much like they have a national museum or a national art gallery. A national film archive will be either a part of those institutions or its own institution, and they are expressly set up with the goal of preserving the film history and film culture of a country. In Canada, we actually have several different archives that serve this role. TIFF has its own archive, which is primarily concerned with its own festival, but they also do a great job of doing a lot of other kind of preservation work. Like, if you need to find out what someone said about a movie in the 1960s, you go in there and they will have newspaper clippings from like the Toronto Star and a lot of other newspapers. And some of the stuff just might not be available online. So it's an excellent place to do research. But there's also, York University has an archive. Ryerson University has an archive. We actually have a proper national archive, which is called Library and Archives Canada. And so we do a lot of this work. The American version of this would be the Library of Congress film registry that they add films to every year. But then also there is, say, the UCLA Film Archive, which is a pretty substantial film archive, and all of the major studios tend to have their own archives as well. But on a national level, you have a lot of different players out there. Sweden, as an example, has a very good film archive. Australia as well, I believe, has a very good film archive. And it appears that Afghanistan also has one. And according to this headline, it was saved from the Taliban what before. But the question now remains, or the question now becomes, what will happen to the archive now that the Taliban is back in control? And the subheading here kind of gets into what's at stake here. Huge questions loom about the status of an archive of thousands of films that date back to 1927. And this is something that I feel like maybe I should be preaching about a little bit more, because I do have a background in film preservation, an academic background in film preservation. We have so little from the early days of cinema. Between the years, or for films produced between 1895 to 1925, or up until about the invention or the mass adoption of sound, we have about 10% of films that were made in that 30-year time period, which is so very little. And so much of our early film history and our understanding of film history is based off of what remains. So this kind of like academic notion of the importance of W.D. Griffith, the person who directed the very racist film Birth of a Nation, a lot of the credit that he gets for inventing certain film techniques and things like this might not actually be true, and we just don't really have the evidence for it. And I'll just quickly go over to Dory's point here, because there's a few points in here that I can address based on my experience. They should digitize their film archive and post them on archive.com or archive.org. And I understand why you would go to that point initially. However, I will add in here that digitizing film is difficult, it takes time, and in a lot of cases might not even be possible. That in large part has to do with the condition that the film is in. So you may or may not be aware that something that can happen to film stock if it's been around for a very long time and hasn't been taken care of properly is that it can get vinegar syndrome. And one of the things that happens when vinegar syndrome sets in is that the film begins to warp a little bit. And I believe anything more than 1 degree of warp means that a film should not be projected. Now, there are film digitizers that don't rely on the sprocket holes that are in film, 16 millimeter, 35 millimeter. They all typically have sprockets on the side that are what get threaded through, or what are used to thread the film through a projector. And any more than 1% can either of warp on that film can either damage the projector or damage the film. There are digitizers that don't rely on the sprockets. They use like a sprocketless way of having the film go through the digitizer, but it's still a lot of work. And then there is the issue of storage. I know that, there may be those of us out there who download a 1080p film and it's only like a gig, 2 gigs, no big deal, right? But those films are heavily compressed. So if we're talking about preserving the film in its best possible quality, for an hour of film, we're talking maybe 100 gigabytes, depending on the resolution, maybe more. If we're scanning it in 4K, it will be quadruple that. So probably 400 gigabytes per hour of film. So that then becomes an issue for storage. I would be able to put 2 hours of film on my laptop right now. And then there becomes a further issue with actual preservation of digital materials, because one thing that you always have to be aware of when it comes to preservation is if you can't access the media, then you're not actually preserving anything. So one of the reasons why a lot of these major film archives will default to preserving the film as best they can, and there are digitization efforts that go on, don't get me wrong, but being able to preserve the original film is actually better because we already know what the technology is that plays it, which are projectors, obviously. And in order to examine the film or see it, you really just need light. You need a table that has like a glass bottom in it with a light coming out of it so you can actually see the individual frames. And to play it, you need a projector. And we even know, going far enough back into film history, that you don't even need electricity to see films, because a lot of the early projectors from the late 1800s used things like lamps and things like this in order to get light through the image. So it's possible to view a film without electricity and even without a projector of sorts. That is not true if you digitize something. If you digitize something, then you obviously need electricity and you obviously need a computer. But beyond that, you need a computer that has the proper codecs in place, the proper storage capacity to be able to download or to have the film loaded onto it. You need to have the right program to play it. So if the computer that you have doesn't have VLC as an example, you might not be able to view it. If you're digitizing the film from film, it could be digitized in a film format that is proprietary, which means that it may not even work on something that's open source like VLC, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The other issue here is that computer technology changes year over year so much that if you give enough time, it's possible that the computer technology will advance in such a way that old things will become unreadable. Think about trying to play a video game or a computer game that was not designed specifically for Windows 95 or Windows 98. There's no guarantee that you're going to be able to just pop that CD-ROM in your disk drive and play it on your current Windows machine. Or what if you have a Mac? Maybe the OS completely changes and those old files are no longer readable. Plus, there is the issue of hard drive storage, because I know, Dory, you're talking about uploading these things to Internet Archive. That is something that you can do, absolutely. But you're not going to be able to upload the best full quality versions of them up there. The archive quality versions of them. That's just way too much bandwidth, and archive.org would not accept anything like that. So now we're talking about how do you store files that are potentially hundreds of gigabytes large. Because you can't do it on hard drives because they have a failure rate of 7 years? They're usually warranted for about 7 years, so that's obviously not the best way of doing it. There's a storage medium called LTO tape, which has now progressed to the point where it can accept files that large, but it is a very specific type of tape storage medium, which is not the fastest to use, and it's basically just like a super, super, super fancy VHS magnetic tape type system, but it can hold over a terabyte, I think, at this point now. And I know I'm basically just doing like a lecture. Can you tell that I went to school for this? LTO tape. Linear tape open. I'm just wondering what where they are currently. Yeah, let's look at the generations. So they're now up to LTO 9, which can hold show me the capacity. Okay, so it has a raw capacity of 18 terabytes. So going back to, I guess, LTO 6, which came out in 2012, then yeah, that would be able to do it. Now, the other thing with this, of course, is that you could just have LTO 6 tapes and have one movie per tape, and you're golden. Except a lot of places that I have been in, they usually have this standard where they replace tapes every 2 generations. So in this case, if you're an archive that has LTO 6 tapes, you will replace it with LTO 8 tapes when they come out. So you're looking at total tape replacement about every 6 years. Not saying you have to do this, but most of them do that. And I think that has to do with how often or how long the actual tape readers are produced for. Because once again, you get into this issue of if you have an LTO 6 reader, it may not be able to read LTO 8 tapes. And so you must always be upgrading in order to make sure that what you are archiving is always accessible. Because if it's not accessible, you are not archiving it. You are just hoarding at that point. So that all being said, Dory, what you're saying, I understand why you say it. I just guess I wanted to lay out all of the reasons why this is kind of it's a solution, but it's not an archival solution. It's not something that would be done by an archive. And then one of the other big reasons beyond this is there is an issue of copyright. So just because a film came out in 1927 doesn't mean that the Afghanistan Film Archive has the right to upload it to the internet, right? And this will be true of films that go from 1927 onwards. So copyright, depending on Afghani law, would likely exist. And so the Afghani Film Archive just wouldn't be able to do this wouldn't be able to do this. I know we have Brent saying here, well, I think it's a decent solution if the alternative is to lose everything. Naturally, yes. I guess I just wanted to bring my perspective of someone who's actually worked in the archival world before and who's like studied film preservation before, the reasons why that wouldn't be done from an academic standpoint. If we're talking about like, you know, someone feeling like a crusader or something, like they need to preserve and get this stuff out on the internet, thinking about like an Indiana Jones type attitude, then yeah, maybe if there's thousands of films and a bunch of time, maybe they get out the 4K digitizer and just digitize 24 hours a day for like years and try to get it all up on the internet. But once again, the process of archiving is slow enough that just saying like, well, just digitize it and put it on the internet, like even that would take years to do. So I think what the main issue we're going to find in this article when we get into it is that there isn't time to do it, and we don't know what's going to happen in the immediate future. And whether or not the Afghanistan Film Archive was digitizing up until now is something we don't know. Plus, we don't know how copyright would apply and things like this. So I'm just going to go back through some of these chat comments because I know I was babbling, as CK said, for quite a bit, just to make sure I address everything. CK said that we also have a great film archive here for early German cinema. Yeah, I think that's the... is that the Murnau Foundation or the Murnau Lang Foundation or something like that? I know there is one that kind of is chiefly concerned with F.W. Murnau, the director of Nosferatu, which will be streamed live here on Cinemateq, 7 p.m. Eastern this Sunday. Yes, but yes, Germany also has a very rich film history, and they take care of their film quite well. I will say there is a lot of effort in the IT world to preserve the old ways of things. It's quite easy to play a game from the 90s on modern PCs. I play Civ 2 and Diablo 2 on my modern computer, and to be honest, it's easier and more convenient now than it was. Yeah, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that there has been like work in order to preserve and to be able to do these things. But when you start talking about like video file formats, as an example, like let's say you preserved a film in like 1998 as a real player file. The fuck you gonna do with that now? Maybe real player exists. Maybe you can still download it. Maybe there's stuff out there that can read it, but you're taking a risk. And I think since we're talking about games, I think that's a bit different because they can be emulated to some degree, whereas I don't believe you can like sort of quote unquote emulate the film, although you could probably emulate the environment that it could play in, but that also carries with it certain issues because in order to see the film, you would need to be able to reliably emulate where it was intended to be shown on first, being like a computer technology from the past. Whereas, as I was saying before, if you just have the film on film, you just need light and perhaps a mechanical projector if you want to project it properly. But in order to actually view the thing, view the individual frames, you just need light. So it's always preferable. And then Brent here saying, I got the impression that the risk is the Taliban will destroy the originals. Yeah, that is also I think the concern. And when we actually get into the article, I think that will be there. So if that's the risk, then you do what you have to preserve it. Which honestly, and I think this goes back to Dory's original point about digitization and what I was saying about how long this would actually take to digitize everything. If the film archive has as much as this article kind of points out, thousands of films, that would take years to do. So if the goal is to preserve the films, then the films must be moved out of Afghanistan. They must be taken away from the Taliban in order to ensure this. A digitization and jump strategy, while noble, would take too long in this regard. CK saying, it feels like the things that happened with destruction of cultural sites a few years ago. Yeah, that was ISIS doing all of that. Fuckers. All of them. Fuckers. At the end of the day, it's still data, which can be emulated, and I wouldn't be surprised if real player files can be converted to something more modern. True. But once again, you're taking the risk. Just turning my cup around. And when you're an archivist, you don't like taking risks. But let's actually get into the article and see what they have to say about it. Right after I look at Brent's latest thing. Also, there's a huge push for open source, everything, so I would hope things that are being preserved now, regardless of what is, would be converted to something open source and not proprietary. You would hope. You would hope. And I think that's something that has been a main source of discussion in the archival world, although granted, I've been outside of that world for about 6 years now. But at the time when I was doing my school, or when I graduated from that program in 2015, that was starting to come up, like ideas of using open source programs. But also, you know, there is still a propensity inside of archival institutions to have to use certain things that are proprietary, like cataloging software, as an example. So, and there's also digitizers in this case. Film digitizers are typically made by fairly substantial companies, and they sell them for like, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you are at the mercy of that company's program when it comes to how they're being digitized, and that program may limit your choices when it comes to what formats you can digitize the film into. If you're lucky, the program will just allow you to digitize the film as hundreds of thousands of still images, which can then be stitched together into a film by any editing software, as long as it can read that image file format. CK saying keeping original material alive is something different than converting it. I'm not sure if you're saying is or isn't there, just based on what that T is doing. Oh, and Dory asking TJ, quick question: best backup solution? LTO 8 tapes, Blu-ray writable discs, flash drives, magnetic drives, cloud storage. LTO tapes is what is most commonly used. Whether or not it's actually the best is probably a debate. I can say that like flash drives, no. Magnetic hard drives, absolutely not. Cloud storage, probably not, because as we've seen with like if there's a lot of redundancy in that cloud storage, then potentially that could be something that you could use. Once again, when I was in film preservation academia, cloud storage really wasn't something that was possible at that time. Like, no one was really talking about being able to upload like petabytes of information into the cloud in like a commercial, or I guess probably in commercial applications that probably was happening, but you know, film archives are not well funded. And so I'm sure that that would have been too expensive at the time. Maybe now that has changed. But I would say LTO tapes, when I was in school for this, were being used most commonly. The CBC, the national broadcaster in Canada, have like a giant archive in the basement of the CBC building, and it's all LTO tapes. And they actually have like a cool little robot that will go around and like take out the tape and put it in a thing, and then take out another tape and put it in the thing, and do some rewriting and transferring and stuff like that. And then the robot will just put everything back. It's pretty cool. And a lot of the bigger institutions will have stuff like that. So just based on my personal experience for backing up things at an archival level, LTO tape would be best. And yes, EK, you're right. Backup is always just backup. It's not preserving. But when you get into film, it becomes like kind of a meta question as to what is actually original. So in the case of film, do we preserve the camera negatives, or do we preserve the versions of the print of the theatrical print that went to theaters? Like, which one is most original in that case? And then also speaking about like the film process, you also have like inner positives and inner negatives that are used during the post-production process. And this is like obviously traditionally back when film was used. So what's original, right? Of course, I think a lot of archives would love to have camera negatives, but for them, like, as long as they have the theatrical release print of a film, that is good enough. But there is kind of just that ongoing question of like, well, what is original? And like, how do you then, what is the best way of then preserving a film that was completely digital from front to back? And I think in some cases, this is true of Libraries and Archives Canada, or at least it was when I interned there. They would actually receive films that may have been shot completely digitally, but part of I need to back up here a second. So in Canada, we have Telefilm Canada, and they will give you money to make a film, because we try to encourage film making, local filmmaking as best we can. And one of the things that you have to do in order to get your last little bit of funding from Telefilm is print your film to film and submit it to Library and Archives Canada. And there has to be two of them. So so even if you shoot completely on digital, if your film is funded by Telefilm Canada, there is a film version of it at Library and Archives Canada. There has to be. So it's kind of this thing where if you, and as I mentioned before, when it comes down to the technology, film is easy, but it also lasts the longest when it is preserved properly. If you keep it at the right temperature and at the right humidity, film can last hundreds of years. We actually don't really know how long it could potentially go for. I've seen as high as like 1,000 years. If it's kept at the right temperature and the right humidity, it is very, very durable. And we can't say that about LTO tapes, as an example, which currently, as far as I know, is the best digital version that we have of archiving things, which is, they have a shelf life of like 50 years, you know? And you also run the risk of, well, what if, like, you know, a bit or a byte on that tape becomes corrupted? Is the whole tape corrupted? Whereas when you're storing a film on a film reel, if one frame becomes a little damaged, still got all the other frames. So, Brent asking, is it kept in a vacuum or something other than oxygen? No, it's kept in oxygen. It's just, it needs to have its temperature regulated to something close to a fridge. So around 4 to 8 degrees, I believe, with a relative humidity of about 25%. And yeah, at that temperature and that humidity, film just keeps on going and going and going. The big issue for a lot of films that were produced, say, before film archival came into its own, is that they were kept in horrendous conditions. Like, you can imagine all of the giant studio film archives out in Burbank, out in California, those giant warehouses. You know, those things are just being kept in who knows what humidity at temperatures that well exceed, you know, 5 and 6 degrees, because it's California. So yes. It is typically just like normal breathing air, but at certain levels. And that, of course, changes when you're preserving nitrate film, because it is so explosive. But that has more to do with safety procedures as opposed to temperature and relative humidity. But in the way that post-nitrate film, which is made on, cellulose acetate, in the way that it can develop vinegar syndrome, if it's kept in a too humid or too warm conditions, if those same kind of conditions are used to keep nitrate film, then the nitrate film may just self-ignite. So once again, keeping it at that lower temperature with lower humidity will keep nitrate mostly safe, as far as I know. But what then becomes the concern is, what happens if it lights on fire? Because if one piece of nitrate film self-ignites, the whole archive could go very easily. And there are a few nitrate-specific archives in the world, and I think one of them actually has, like, it'll have a floor, like one whole floor that just has, like, you know, the rows and whatever of film canisters, and then the floor above it is just water. It's just a giant water tank. And so if the very instant that fire is detected in the archive, like, the roof comes back on that floor and the entire vault immediately floods with water. Just floods the whole thing. And the thinking is, like, it's a lot easier to, you know, dry these films out, because flood damage is a problem for film as well. But it would be a lot easier to save them if they're underwater than to not be able to save them at all because they've caught on fire. So that is how finicky nitrate film is. Whew. CK saying, I guess I'm a hopeless romantic. I once held a film roll with a part from Metropolis in my hand. Magical, but I truly appreciate modern technology to keep things alive. Yeah, it has to be, like, honestly, in the best case scenario, it's a combination of the two. So in the case of what I was talking about before, with accessibility being a very important part of preservation, if you have, say, something like, the one surviving copy of Nosferatu, which all modern copies are derived from, you're probably going to have like academics and people wanting to look at it. There are going to be things about that particular piece of film that could tell you about its history and how it ended up being the only copy of Nosferatu that we have. But you also need to remember that the more you handle a film, the more it will degrade. So in the case of digitization, it makes sense in this case because it means that you can actually screen that original version of it means that you can have the original, but that scholars and academics can review the digital material. So you actually reduce the amount that people need to touch the original, and then they can use that digital intermediary for their studies or even for screenings. Yeah, so digital does play a role in that thing. So it's never going to be a case of like, oh, we have to digitize everything and throw away all the film originals, or we have to keep all the film originals and not digitize anything. It will always be some combination of the two, and to what extent that's done is going to be dictated by the resources of the film archive. If you have infinite money and infinite storage in all regards, then yeah, just digitize everything and keep everything. But it's one of the things about film archives that they don't really ever talk about, is that they often throw out film. They just get rid of shit because they don't have the room to keep it. And so one of the jobs of the archivist is determining what is culturally significant and what fits the mandate of the institution. And that also just goes a lot into why or what gets picked and what gets selected. So for the Canadian Film Archive in Gatineau, their mandate is Canadian films. So that's easy. But then also they have to consider themselves like, well, we have all of this stuff from David Cronenberg, but we also have some stuff from this one director who no one's ever heard about before. What do we keep if we have to get rid of what do we keep if we have to get rid of stuff? Well, you're going to keep the David Cronenberg stuff, of course. And if they had infinite resources and infinite space, I'm sure they would keep all of it, but that's not always going to be the case. So if you're a film archivist, you occasionally need to make that hard decision. Brent's saying, I'm surprised that nitrate films aren't kept in a vacuum. They may be in some cases. I just use that example about the water flood thing because to me, it speaks to how extreme the danger is for nitrate film, like how dangerous it is to screen nitrate film, to keep nitrate film, to preserve it. To me, it's just a great story about how dangerous it actually is to preserve it, and what we actually go through in order to preserve parts of our heritage and our culture. And then yes, I imagine there are lots of no smoking signs around. You're probably not even allowed to think about fire when you're walking through that place. That all said, let's actually read this article. All right, so talking about the Afghani Film Archive and what kind of trouble the Taliban will cause to this archive. Oh, excuse me. During the Taliban's rule of Afghanistan from 1996 to 2001, women and girls were shut out of public life. Punishments took the form of public executions, and media was banned. That made the archives of the state-run Afghan film, featuring scenes of women with their hair uncovered and other vignettes of the country's past, a fast target of the Taliban. But one government worker was instrumental in helping preserve them with lies and misdirection, according to Ibrahim Afri, former general director of Afghan film, who was on the job between 2012 and 2018. In case the Taliban insisted on taking material away, this man organized celluloid films which did not contain important Afghan film material, e.g. preview clips, that the Taliban could take to burn, if he told IndieWire via email. He declined in any individual, citing a need to protect his safety. This is kind of... I did do some volunteer work at the University of Toronto Film Archive, and they have like a lot of film in there. But they also have a lot of like original film trailers that they were able to pick up from movie theaters that were shutting down in the 90s and things like this. Things like trailers you often didn't have to send back. You could just keep that stuff. So it sounds to me like this is kind of the stuff that they were handing over. Probably not trailers specifically, but things that were deemed to be less important than actual feature-length films. Efforts to protect, restore, and digitize that window into Afghanistan's history emerged over the last 20 years, coinciding with a robust return of film and TV to the country. But now that the Taliban has returned to power, huge questions loom about the status of that archive, which dates back to 1927. The recent history of the archive is tense and a sensitive subject to those most intimately familiar with it. It was moved to the presidential palace in Kabul in summer of 2018 and became part of the National Archives, a decision that angered many in Afghanistan's film community, according to Sarah Kamiri, who became the first woman general director of Afghan film in May 2019. I had a few meetings with them, but I couldn't convince them to return the archives, she said in a phone interview with Kiev, Ukraine, where she fled from Kabul in August. It didn't belong anymore to Afghan film. When we wanted films, we needed to go through a lot of bureaucratic process. Neither Kamiri nor Arifi know the exact status of the archives, but Karimi says it's clear they're now under control of the Taliban. But digitization of a portion of the archive offers one glimmer of hope in the preservation of the country's cinematic history. When the Taliban previously controlled Afghanistan in the 90s, it banned the internet and destroyed TVs and cameras. This time around, it is embracing the power of media and painting itself as less extreme. The government's higher education minister recently said women will be allowed to continue to study in universities, but classrooms will be gender segregated. And once again, never believe anything the Taliban say. But this is actually kind of an interesting image here, because this is an example of a reel of film that has experienced vinegar syndrome from the looks of it. You can kind of see how it's not perfectly circular anymore and how there's been some warping. So this is a film that would be difficult, if not impossible, to project these days, and that appears to be 35mm film. A Taliban spokesperson told the Washington Post in late September that the interim government is still making a framework for issues around arts and culture, which probably means they're just destroying things and not telling anybody. God, I hope not. Whether a form of art is permissible or prohibited will be governed by Islamic law, he said. So, law that was created before the invention of cinema will decide whether or not it's allowed to exist. Wonderful. Karimi recently posted a photo on Twitter taken in her former office, featuring a group of men raising their hands in prayer. Among them is the new Afghan film leader, though Karimi does not know details about him besides describing him as a mullah or a religious leader schooled in Taliban's Islamic ideals. Members of the Afghan film community said that they are deeply concerned about what the Taliban's rule will mean for the country's past and future media. IndieWire has reached out to a Taliban representative for comment and will update the piece accordingly. I kind of doubt they're going to be hearing from anyone. Filmic representations of the country's history are particularly important. Ooh, where did that go? Because they offer the country's younger generation a window into their nation's past, said Wasma Osman, a Temple University professor and filmmaker whose family left Afghanistan as refugees in the 80s. Prior to the Taliban's rule and civil war in the 90s and the Soviet-Afghan War a decade earlier, a vibrant film culture was taking hold in Afghanistan, particularly in the 60s and 70s, when it coincided with a democratic movement and government investment in culture. They began to envision a more secular, progressive Afghanistan. They actively supported the arts and culture programs, Osman said. In the 60s, they started financing filmmakers. They would send people to neighboring countries. Some people were trained in Soviet realism. Some people were trained in more Bollywood style. Some people were trained in Iran's more avant-garde filmmaking. So from the sounds of it, Afghan films from that time period would be pretty interesting to check out. Arifi, a filmmaker who left Afghanistan to study in the Soviet Union and later settled in Germany as conflict ravaged his home country, returned to Afghanistan about a decade ago to oversee the preservation of the archive. His work is the subject of Pietra Burt-Kelly's 2015 documentary, A Flickering Truth, which depicts workers sorting dusty reels piled in a barn, crunching on piles of unspooled celluloid with every step, and the discovery of films in a drop ceiling uncovered years after the Taliban's rule ended. Oh my God. I felt obliged to return to Afghanistan because I had the education and training to work with celluloid films and felt morally obligated or obliged to show and teach others how to preserve these cultural treasures, he said. The films in the archives contain large parts of Afghan history and development of the last century. There are not just films, but moving pictures showing Afghanistan's streets, people, buildings, and culture, and how they've changed over time. These materials are cultural treasures that need to be protected and saved. They show how civilized and developed Afghanistan was and how it changed. This is still going into a bit more of the history of it. So I think we kind of get the gist of this, that this is a very long article. So I suggested if anyone is interested in this, it's on IndieWire. But I think we're kind of getting the gist of this here, in that the future of the film archive is not known. And while there were measures taking place during previous Taliban rule in order to help preserve and help save these films, whether or not those same measures are even going to be something that is considered by who is in charge of the Afghan Film Archive at this point is in doubt, I would say. However, it's now giving me something to add to my watch list. This documentary called A Flickering Truth sounds pretty cool. But this, as well, does not look like a film archive that has been had its humidity and temperature regulated very well, considering it's in a barn. But that could just be where things were being hidden from the Taliban. Whew. All right. So yeah, that was a pretty good, pretty lengthy discussion we just had. I'm into it. So yeah, it's sad. It's sad that a country's cultural history could be in such jeopardy. And I just hope that all of the films make it through in one piece. And I hope that Afghanistan can one day not be ruled by fucking assholes. So moving on from this, and where do you go from here? Oh yes, 5 takeaways from the No Time to Die box office. This is coming from Rebecca Rubin over at Variety. Maybe we won't spend much time on the rest of all of this stuff. Are they gonna? Yeah. All right. So, and these were kind of touched on a little bit yesterday, but since that live stream is not available because it kind of failed, and, you know, I want to just do something that's not talking about heavy things like film archival in Afghanistan. I don't even know if that sentence makes sense. Here are the takeaways from the James Bond box office. Older audiences aren't ready to return to theaters, and this was something that we did talk about yesterday. The expectations for No Time to Die were that it would make around 70 million and ended up making about 55 to 56. And one of the things that came out of that was this idea that people who were older, have been James Bond fans their entire lives, were not ready to return to theaters, and that makes a lot of sense to me. It also tells us that young men aren't sweating the variants. I guess this is about me, so maybe I will read it. Just like older audiences have been more or less absent from theaters, another consistency has been boys and men buying tickets in force. For No Time to Die, audiences skewed heavily male, representing 64% of ticket sales. That was also the case with Venom, Venom 2, Shang-Chi, Black Widow, and F9. Those properties all cater to young audiences, which is likely why initial returns were higher than No Time to Die. But more bros were showing up. Woo! Next thing, it's all about IMAX. When people have been going to cinemas, they have been opting to watch the latest blockbuster in the best quality possible. And this is something about the theatrical industry that kind of annoys me. And I've been slowly realizing this over time, and it kind of just solidified for me a few weeks ago when I was thinking about my own theater-going experiences and where I watch film. Thinking locally in terms of Cineplex, which is the big multiplex chain in Canada, really the only multiplex chain that still exists in Canada outside of like Landmark maybe. But Landmark isn't in downtown Toronto, so they don't exist to me. When it comes to going to see films at Cineplex, I will only see films now in IMAX or Ultra AVX or one of the screen formats that they do that is considered to be premium. And that is because the screening experience in like one of their normal theaters is not guaranteed to be good. There are, of course, exceptions that I have to make for films that I want to see as soon as possible. So like The Eyes of Tammy Faye and The Card Counter. I saw those in a normal theater, but I was going to a Cineplex theater which has a better reputation, so I felt better doing that. However, going to Scotiabank downtown, I will only do IMAX and Ultra AVX. There's no point in going to see a film in any of the other theaters. You have no idea what your screening experience is going to be. Those theaters aren't even that soundproof. So if you're going to see a film like Little Women, and I think this actually did happen to me when I went to see Little Women a few years ago, if there's a big Marvel film playing next door, you are hearing those explosions, and it's a little distracting. But this is also the case with the Young and Dundas Cineplex. Their IMAX is good, although not entirely soundproof. Their Ultra AVX is good, and usually their like individual normal theaters have a bit of a better experience. But if I am guaranteed to get a better experience from IMAX, whether or not the film was shot in IMAX, I'm going to go see it in IMAX because I want to see like the brightest picture possible. I want to see something that is properly projected. And by creating these more premium screening experiences, Cineplex has almost given itself the excuse as to why it underprojects their lower stuff, like their normal theater ticket price, and projects properly the premium tickets, the VIP screens, and the Ultra AVXs and the IMAXs. So it sucks because they've basically said, yes, we will give you a worse screening experience to force you to pay more money to get the screening experience you should be getting normally. And this is why I love theaters, local theaters like TIFF and like the Fox, because they project properly. And like, I'm a member at TIFF, so I can just go pay like, $6.50, which is half price of even the normal screenings at Cineplex, and see something like Titan screened properly. And I know it's being screened properly. And those theaters are soundproof, and they have excellent sound quality. And it's the same thing with the Fox. The sound quality is not wonderful. Occasionally you can hear streetcars go by outside, but it is a very old building. But they project properly. And something else that Dory is pointing out, there are too many assholes in theaters. And that's true. I don't know if I told you guys this story or not, but I went to see a 3D screening of Alfred Hitchcock's Dial M for Murder at the Fox, and I had to leave after I literally called a man an asshole. That was a great time. It wasn't. It was terrible. I was really looking forward to seeing Dial M for Murder in 3D. I had never seen it in 3D before. It had been remastered into like real 3D, so it wasn't using the red and blue glasses, unfortunately. But I had a guy who showed up late, talked the whole time, and he had his partner with him, sat in the wrong seats. It's all assigned seating. Had another guy show up late who was actually supposed to be in the seats that the loud guy was in. So then this guy who showed up late sits like almost directly next to me, which is not allowed because of social distancing. So I then got up and moved to an empty seat, which I was hoping would stay empty. And then guy who showed up late who was loud then moved over to his proper seats, which ended up being like directly behind me and to the left. And then spent the first hour of the film just chatting, just talking to his partner about like what was going on in the movie, even though everyone was watching the movie and didn't need to have the movie explained to him. And then my favorite part before I actually told this guy, before I finally told him to stop talking, was when he was retelling his partner what had happened in the scene before and why the person was doing the actions that they were doing now in the scene, but he got it wrong. He was misquoting the film that he had actively been watching, and this was literally something that happened less than 2 minutes after this guy started describing why things were happening in this scene. And he got it wrong. That actually made me chuckle to myself. But also, it wasn't that I was hearing like, mumbled words here or there. I could distinctly and clearly make out everything this man was saying. And he was 2 rows behind me and to the left. So then you could say that maybe I lost my cool. I like to think that I kept myself pretty under control, considering the circumstances. I turned around, and also I need to say, there have been a number of times in the screening where I turned around and just stared at both of them. And I did make eye contact with his partner a couple of times. So I was hoping that she would be like, hey, you need to stop talking, but I don't think she ever did. So after a few times of that, and then this continued talking, I think he was actually starting to get a little bit louder. Maybe I'm just making it up in my head. But I did turn around and I did say, please stop talking. Like just looking directly at him, like, please stop talking. I didn't say shut up. I didn't whatever. I said it mad. I said it a bit angry because I was angry. But I was just like, please stop talking. And then the guy, no joke, looks at me and says, well, you're the one who's talking. And he starts trying to blame me or bring me into it being, and telling me that like I'm also the problem because I've spoken this one time. And I then turn my head away in disgust because I just don't want to deal with this asshole anymore. And he keeps talking to me while my head is turned. And he keeps going on being like, he's talking, I'm talking, he's what? And then at that point, I just picked up my backpack, walked out. And as I was walking by him, I just called him an asshole and left. And I was not able to see the second screening of Dialing for Murder, which happened a couple of days later. So I will probably never be able to see the entirety of Dialing for Murder in 3D ever again. Thanks, Jerkface McJerkface at the Fox Theater. And now I also worry, like, every time I go into the Fox, I'm like, is that guy gonna be here? God damn it, I hope not. And yeah, Tori's saying 6'4" TJ is scary, and it's like, yeah, it can be. But also, if I'm in that kind of screening environment, I'm doing my best to not raise my voice or lose my cool or lose my temper or anything like that. TJ, when he loses his temper, that's scary. that is definitely not something I like. But yeah, it's just that just pissed me off so much. And I think it was also just the audacity of the guy to then try to blame me, to say that I was also being the bad person here. I don't know what would have happened if I would have just turned around and gone like shush and shushed him like the fucking petulant child that he was. That probably would have led to other fun things. Being like, don't shush me. Who knows? But yeah. I guess the lesson from all of this is don't feel bad about telling people to shut up in the movies. You paid your money. They're ruining your experience. Tell them to shut up. And I've had to do it a lot since we were able to go back to theaters. More than I was doing before. And I think part of this is because people have gotten into the habit of talking during movies while they watch them in their living room. And so I am polite. I'm usually just like, please stop talking. I sometimes have to raise my voice so that they can actually hear me. But it's not angry. It's just, please stop talking. And they're usually like, oh, sorry. Because they sometimes don't realize that like their voice can carry so much over the span of say like 8 seats or 10 seats or something like this. And this has happened to me in IMAX screenings where I've been in my usual seat. Someone has been like 10 seats down that way, and I can still clearly audibly hear them. I had to do this during Dear Evan Hansen because during some of the emotional moments, someone was just like talking to their partner once again. And I had to be like, just please stop talking. So don't be afraid of doing that. Don't be afraid. Just tell people that they're being annoying. And, you know, also don't feel bad about telling people to put their phones away because people are very quick to do so as soon as they realize that looking at their phones is actually distracting. So that's my rant about that. Let's go back to Variety. An October to remember. Okay, let's actually go back to the chat for a second. Brent saying other people is probably the #1 reason why I don't care to go to the theater. Yeah, other people suck. That's why I also tend to go to these kind of like IMAX UVX screenings of the blockbusters because the sound is so loud that it also just drowns out all the idiots talking. So there's that. And Dory, to be clear, I see you're saying like you sung out loud at Evan Hansen. I wouldn't give a shit about that. As long as it's like, you know, as long as we're not talking about like a packed sold out theater and you're the only one singing, that might be something that is not great. But if you're in like a fairly lively crowd and there are other people who are like hooting and hollering and getting into the singing, like I don't give a shit about that. That's a good theatrical experience in my mind. I love going to Midnight Madness where people are constantly like, you know, yelling at the screen and laughing when people die and, you know, just expressing out loud how the film is making them feel. I'm cool with that. But like, if we're watching a Hitchcock film from the 50s and you're just like talking so loud that I can hear you as clearly as the people on screen are speaking, and like one of the best parts about those films are the dialogue and how the characters interact with each other, you are fundamentally ruining my theatrical experience. But also I think there's also an expectation in that particular screening that people be quiet. In a Dear Evan Hansen screening, where there's a lot of Dear Evan Hansen stands, yeah, I can understand some people singing or getting into it. whatever. Just like how I don't care in a horror film if there's a jump scare or something like that and people like react. That's fine. But just yeah, if you're ever in doubt, just don't say anything. Rant over. An October to remember ? Outside of IMAX, moviegoing has hardly compared to pre-pandemic levels. Yet October, which isn't a typically busy period at the box office, is shaping up to be stronger than historically lucrative summer months as audiences return to theaters. Thanks to the Venom sequel and No Time to Die, October has already outpaced May of 2021. Of course it has. The official start to summer blockbuster season in overall ticket sales. It's the first time, maybe ever, that has happened. Through its first 10 days, October has generated $269 million in receipts, while the entire month of May, which saw the release of A Quiet Place Part 2, Cruella, and hardly any compelling titles, brought in $215 million. If Halloween Kills and Dune incentivize movie watchers in droves, and once again, those are two movies that are probably more male-centric and for younger audiences, Halloween Kills especially, although Dune could also suffer from not being able to bring out older people. I think they're just saying here that October could eclipse July, August, and June to become the biggest month of the year. Whether or not it breaks records, it marks a notable improvement of the first quarter of the year, with lackluster turnouts in January, February, and March because of the pandemic we were all still in. And it also, the takeaway is that James Bond may need to economize, and I'm pretty sure this is going to talk about the length of the film. For No Time to Die to start is somewhat disappointing because it carries an enormous budget and will need to gross at least 800 million globally to get out of the red, probably closer to 900 million. I think it's over $1 billion personally, but that's just me. Box office experts predict the film will complete its domestic run with approximately 150 million, considerably short of its franchise's predecessors at Skyfall, which got 300 million, and Spectre that got 200 million. In that case, No Time to Die will need to generate significant coinage at international box office, where it is already amassing a strong 145 million. It has yet to open in China, which is, of course, the biggest film market at this point, which is a popular market for Bond. No Time to Die has grossed 313 million to date. This isn't talking about economizing in the same way that I thought. So I think in this case, it just means that it needs to make its money elsewhere. But that's always been the case for James Bond. It's always been a very strong international performer. I thought they were going to make the point that you need to have shorter films that can screen more often. And this is something that we pointed out yesterday. There are more overall screenings of Venom 2 in theaters right now because the film is an hour and a half long. So you can like physically have more screenings during the day, which means you can sell more tickets. When you have a 2.5 hour movie, and I know that Avengers Endgame kind of messed with this idea, but we also have to remember that when Avengers Endgame came out, it was one of the only films you could see in theaters. Like, that film was on almost every screen. You couldn't see other things. And No Time to Die did not have that same kind of rollout. I also don't know to the extent screenings were selling out. I don't know if that's something that I could actually look up. But yeah, if you have a shorter film, even if the film was 2 hours as opposed to 2 hours and like 40 minutes, that's 40 minutes per screening that you would be saving, which over the course of 3 screenings is over 2 hours, or is exactly exactly 2 hours of time. So just shorten the film by 40 minutes, you gain an extra screening per screen, which means you get to make more money, which when you multiply that over 4,000 theaters that are showing the film, that's good. That's good business stuff. I don't know why they weren't doing that. I mean, also it's Daniel Craig Seneff and they want to do it right. I just feel like, and this is also the hard thing for me because I didn't want it to be a shorter film. I know people have complained about No Time to Die being too long at like 2 hours and 43 minutes or whatever it was, but I didn't want it to be shorter, mostly because it felt like a movie that they spent hundreds of millions of dollars on. It was lush, it was beautiful. It moved at a decent enough pace where I wasn't really ever bored. I was interested in what was going on, and I just wanted to live in that world as much as possible. There are issues with the film, absolutely, but it wasn't a film that I necessarily needed to end early so I could get out of it so I could go do other things. I wanted to live inside that world a little bit longer. And so I say all that, but also from a financial standpoint, it just would have made more sense at putting out a 2 hour version of it. And I don't know what you cut out of it. I think you're probably just doing a lot of scenes a lot more quickly. maybe that's something that like a fan edit will bring out, like a 2-hour version of it or a 1 hour and 45-minute version of it, to see how it is, what it looks like. But yeah, if you're trying to make the most money possible, you need to start making shorter films. Hollywood, in case you weren't aware of this. So that's all about what I will say to this. I will go over to Dory, who says that they should have cut out the Ana de Armas scene. And yeah, okay, I was gonna have words with you, but you did qualify that by saying it was the best scene in the movie. Yes, you absolutely cannot get rid of the Ana de Armas scene. It's also like important from a plot perspective, because, and I don't want to get into spoilers because people have asked there to be no time to die spoilers on these streams, but yeah, it's the best scene in the movie. Absolutely, Ana de Armas is fantastic in the film. More films of that character, please. Absolutely. But yeah, there probably could have been some trimming, but at the same time, whatever. I just wanted to live in that movie forever. So now let's move on from James Bond. We've been streaming for about 2.5 hours at this point, so I'm going to speed run some of this last stuff. First of all, just a heads up, James Wan's Malignant, which if you haven't watched it, you absolutely need to watch it. It's the most batshit insane, over-the-top, fun horror movie of the year. I wouldn't be surprised if this film gets represented in the Cinemateq Film Awards this year. I might even campaign for it to go. I mean, if we have the best horror film category, I really hope this makes it in, and that people get to vote on it, because I really enjoy this movie. But if you haven't seen it yet, it will be out digitally October 22nd. So you could watch one of the best horror films of the year on Halloween if you so choose. And it will be on DVD and Blu-ray November 30th, so about a month and about a week after it. But absolutely worth the digital rental. So good. And we have Dory saying the Malignant actress is the next great actress. That is an interesting call, because I think she's been around for a while. And she's mostly been doing horror stuff. Look at me saying that I was going to do like just a short speed run, and now I'm already like Googling for stuff. Cast, is it Annabelle Wallis's Medicine like? Yeah. So she's what? It doesn't give me her age, but she's been around for a while. Yeah, she was in the Tudors. Oh, I forgot about that. But she's been active for a while. If we just look at her filmography, she's been acting in films since 2005. So I agree that she probably will start getting a lot more roles and things like this, especially after Malignant. And I guess she's also in Silent Night, which is another... Oh, it's a comedy film. I thought that was going to be a... Oh, she's in Warning, that other movie we were talking about that has Alice Eve in it. Weird. But yes, we could see her appearing in more films. Oh, she was in Jericho. Yo, that was a fun TV show. Anyone? Oh, that's a different TV show. Never mind. Oh, and she's in Star Trek Discovery. She's the voice of Zora. Cool. All right. Well, there you go. Annabelle Wallis? Annabelle Wallis. Yeah. According to Dory, the next great actress. She was pretty good in Malignant. So there's that. So once again, if you haven't seen Malignant, comes out October 22nd. Please check it out. It's super cool. And then speaking of horror films that are going to be available to see, we've got 13 new horror movies and shows releasing this week, including 5 horror franchise returns. Oh my God, this is coming from Josh Squires, who also did the last one for Bloody Disgusting. We'll focus in on the films. I just want to see if they give me a list, because I don't want to read through a whole article for this. Come on. You're going to make me read through the whole article. Yeah, jerk. In fact, this week is loaded with big returns for beloved horror franchises, including Child's Play, which is TV. I Know What You Did Last Summer, which I believe is TV. Halloween, which is Halloween Kills, which is a movie. And Romero's Day of the Dead? Really? One of the biggest new releases of the week will be the Chucky TV show, so we don't care about that. Oh, Devon Sawa's in it. That's fun. Talking about the series. Francesco Gianni's indie horror film Haul will be released on Tuesday, coming to VOD, so I guess that's one to look for. In the film, scattered victims are thrust into the fight of their lives when a hotel hallway is ravaged by a mysterious virus. That's a pandemic film if I've ever heard of one, and the trailer is available for you to watch. Netflix's docu-series, The Movies That Made Us, return with new episodes on Tuesday, and the reason we're mentioning it here on Bloody Disgusting is because the new season is a very horror-heavy series. So it looks like we're getting films that will be include Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, and Aliens, including RoboCop and Coming to America. RoboCop would actually be kind of fun. I wonder how many times someone mentions the shooting a guy in the dick scene. The Halloween episode will be interesting though, because I rewatched that last night, and I'm now like really starting to understand why it's as good as it is, which is weird because I've seen it so many times. But I'm really starting to get it now. I'm starting to get Halloween. Moving on to Wednesday, we have a brand new original called Fever Dream, which will be on Netflix. So that's fun. A young woman lies dying far from home. A boy sits beside her. She is not his mother. He is not her child. Together, they tell a haunting story of broken souls, an invisible threat, and the power and desperation of family. And then the other release for Wednesday will be the Disney Plus series Just Beyond, but that is a series, so I don't care about that. And it's on Disney Plus, boo. A brand new Shudder original, The Medium, will be available on Thursday, October 14th. The new film from director Bejon Pisanthikan, who directed the original Shudder from the looks of it, or the American remake of Shudder, I'm not sure which. Probably the original. A documentary team follows Nim, a shaman based in northern Thailand, the Insan area, and encounters her niece Mink, showing strange symptoms that seem to be inheritance of shamanism. The team decides to follow Mink, hoping to capture the shaman lineage passing on to the next generation, but her bizarre behavior becomes more extreme. That looks freaky. Look at that fire. That's fun. Oh, this is Halloween Kills. This is not the Thai horror movie trailer. But that sounds cool. I have Shudder. I'll probably check that out. And then that brings us to Friday, which is actually not true because Halloween Kills is having its previews on Thursday. So if you're cool like me, you'll be seeing it on Thursday evening. So we're basically just talking about Halloween Kills. I think we all know what that's about. I Know What You Did Last Summer, the former film franchise, now being the Amazon TV series, so we won't really care about that. Then there's the sci-fi series Day of the Dead, which is also premiering on Friday and is based on the universe of the same name, but it's a TV series, so we don't care. Ooh, this could be a movie. Rachel Nichols stars in Miles Dolick's new movie Demigod, which will release in theaters and on VOD platforms on Friday, courtesy of Gravitas Ventures. I have not heard a single thing about this film, so I know nothing about it. Nichols plays Robin, a woman who travels with her husband to Germany's Black Forest upon learning that her huntsman grandfather has died and left her all his worldly possessions. Upon arrival, a terrifying secret forces her to reckon with her family's past and mysterious ritual she thought was the stuff of fairy tales. Interesting. Could be folk horror. That could be fun. Rachel Nichols can be okay. I don't know. I guess I don't really have a lot of opinions about her acting ability. I just remember her not being very good in the first G.I. Joe film, but nobody was very good in the first G.I. Joe film. Even Channing Tatum wasn't very good in the first G.I. Joe film, and that is tough because he is good. So we got a new anthology horror movie entitled Grave Intentions, and it will be released on Friday somehow. Who knows how? We are getting a remake of Slumber Party Massacre, but I believe that is a TV show, so get out of here. And then on Sunday, we're getting Fear the Walking Dead returns to AMC, which is a TV show that we don't care about. So those are some of the horror things that are coming out this week for you to be excited about. Moving on. Moving on, and I will call this a movie adjacent story. This one also coming from Josh Squires at Bloody Disgusting. There is paranormal vodka that you can buy, and it was aged in haunted locations, including the Conjuring house. You remember the Conjuring house we were talking about, the one that is currently for sale. Well, it looks like they were making booze in there, and you can now buy that booze. To quote the article, nobody's doing spooky spirits better than Harridan Vodka this Halloween, as the company just announced limited edition bottles of vodka aged in America's most haunted houses. The press release sent out today explains the Paranormal Reserve includes only 60 limited edition bottles rested for 7 days in 3 of America's most haunted houses. The Basilica, what? The Veliska Axe Murder House, the Trans Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, and the farm on Round Top Road, which inspired the movie The Conjuring. So let me know in the chat if you are interested in spooky booze. I wonder, can you actually buy it? When does it go on sale? Bottles of the 88 proof vodka will be available for purchase in select NYC liquor stores, who will offer nationwide shipping starting October 13th. The price tag is $140 per bottle. Get right the fuck out of here. There is no way I'm spending that much money on alcohol. Hell no. And what if you get it and it's bad vodka? Like, no. And I would just be mixing this with club soda, so absolutely not. I am not. No. Cinephiles, stay away. Unless you are fucking rich, maybe don't get $140 haunted vodka. I think this is the Scream trailer for when I was looking for it, and then looking at LTO tape. So that's all the news stories I was going to talk about today. We've gotten to the end of this stream successfully, unless there's even more news. I mean, maybe I kind of have to talk about that one that just popped up. Seeing some reviews for Halloween Kills pop up, I believe. Ooh. Who else wants a Dread sequel? Let's talk about that quickly. Like, the campaigning for a Dread sequel continues, everybody. This coming to us from Slash Film, written by Jeremy Mathai. Let's see. Yeah, Alex Garland was the director of this, but then wasn't the director of this. Oh, Olivia Thirlby is in Why the Last Man. I didn't realize that. So this is to quote her. First of all, let me just say I was always the #1 advocate for getting a sequel for Dread. I love that movie and I love that character. If there is still talk of there being a sequel 10 years later, I am all for it. If we're going to talk about a sequel to Dread, we have to also whisper to the gods of the film universe that Alex Garland will be a part of that. Got Brent saying that he definitely wants a Dread sequel. Yup. Although I will say it doesn't quite hold up as well as I remember, but I think that's because I have such a strong feeling, like a strong association with my initial screenings of Dread. I saw it in theaters, and then for the first time in my life, bought a pirated DVD version of it at my local convenience store, watched that, and then went back to theaters and watched it again. And I think I saw it in both non-3D and 3D. It's honestly one of the last times I've gone back to a theater to watch a film. And it's the only time I have purchased an illegal pirated DVD, which if this gets me in trouble with the authorities, I'm sorry. I purchased the Blu-ray and I saw it twice in theaters. Leave me alone. So this just sounds like this is mostly coming from lead actress Olivia Thirlby. So yeah, let's keep it alive. Let's keep those positive thoughts going out into the universe. Dread sequel. Let's make it happen, everybody. Let's manifest the shit out of that. Oh. Anything else here of interest aside from the one that's at the very top that I should probably talk about? Doesn't look like anything big has happened unless I'm totally missing something. I think the big thing that happened today would have been the Scream trailer debut. Yeah. So let's go with this one because I wasn't really aware that this happened. It's an IndieWire ad. Surprise! I have heard I've heard good things about Mass, and that it will potentially be a front runner at the Oscars. I also just realized that there's an actress called Martha Plimpton in it, and I worked with her on a film years and years ago. Quite nice, quite a lovely woman. Dory asking, better action movie, Dread or Raid Redemption? Ooh. I think Raid probably holds up better, but I will always love Dread so much. So let's look at this particular article. Dwayne Johnson, also known as The Rock, says Fast and Furious crew quietly thanked him for slamming Vin Diesel. Really? Why don't Johnson and Diesel get along? We are philosophically two different people, Johnson said. So let's get into this a bit more, because of the slamming of Vin Diesel is what I'm interested in, because I don't recall that happening publicly. Dwayne Johnson revealed in a new interview with Vanity Fair that crew members on the Fast and Furious franchise thanked him after he called out Vin Diesel as a chicken shit and candy ass in a viral Instagram post, which revealed the extent to which Johnson and Diesel had been feuding during the making of the Fast movies. The feud itself has been well documented over the years. Johnson admitted regret to Vanity Fair in going public with his frustrations over Diesel, but he stands by everything he said. For starters, here's the original quote Johnson put on the Instagram slamming Diesel. My female co-stars are always amazing and I love them. My male co-stars, however, are a different story. Some conduct themselves as stand-up men and true professionals, while others don't. The ones that don't are too chicken shit to do anything about it anyways. Candy asses. When you watch this movie next April and it seems like I'm not acting in some of those scenes and my blood is legit boiling, you're right. Hashtag 0 tolerance for candy asses. Brent saying, kinda wish they'd bury the hatchet so they can work together and appear together in films. Yeah, it'd be nice, but I feel like maybe that bridge has been burnt a little too badly at this point. And at least they're not resorting to things like on The Good Wife, which I know is not a movie, but on The Good Wife, two of the lead actresses, I forget their names now, but they hated each other so much they couldn't be in scenes together, and their final scene together on the show had to be like digitally manipulated. So like one would talk and there'd be a bit of an awkward pause because they didn't have the timing right, and then the other one would talk. And so I'm glad that they're actually, like, I would prefer this, like what has happened on the Fast franchise, like we just know that they don't like each other, to the TV show like solution of like trying to pretend like everything is fine and making the best of it. This, at least we know what's up. So Johnson told Vanity Fair the day he posted the above, just wasn't my best day because he chose to share it with the world. It caused a firestorm. Yet interestingly enough, it was as if every single crew member found their way to me and either quietly thanked me or sent me a note, he added. But yeah, it wasn't my best day sharing that. I shouldn't have shared that. Because at the end of the day, that goes against my DNA. I don't share things like that, and I take care of that kind of bullshit away from the public. They don't need to know that. That's why I say it wasn't my best day. I meant what I said, for sure. I mean what I say when I say it, Johnson added. But to express it publicly was not the right thing to do. Johnson also confirmed rumors that he met with Diesel after the post went viral, but added, I wouldn't call it a peaceful meeting. I would call it a meeting of clarity. He and I had a good chat in my trailer, and it was out of that chat that it really became just crystal clear that we are two separate ends of the spectrum, and we agreed to leave it there. We are philosophically two different people, and we approach the business of movie making in two very different ways, Johnson told Vanity Fair. It's the philosophy of going into work every day, looking at everybody as equal partners, and looking at the studio as equal partners, and looking at the crew, regardless of where you're at, either on the call sheet or otherwise, as equal partners, with respect and with humility, and being respectful of the process and every other human being who is putting in just as much time, just as much hard work, and sweat equity, if not more. And I think it's always been important to me to always be straight up and look somebody in the eye, and if you say you're going to do something, do it. So, from the sounds of that, Vin Diesel is on the opposite end of things and does not see things as being an equal partnership, and probably sees himself as being very central to the creation of these films, and is probably less interested in what others have to say or other people's input. That's what I'm kind of taking away from that. And then this gets into where the feud went. I guess it's only a couple of paragraphs. Let's just end this out. Diesel reopened the feud in June after explaining to Men's Health magazine that the source of the tension was him giving tough love to Johnson in order to get Johnson's acting to where it needed to be, Diesel added, that took a lot of work. We had to get there, and sometimes, at that time, I could give a lot of tough love. Not Fellini-esque, but I would do anything I'd have to do in order to get performances in anything I'm producing. Which is, to be clear, the director's job, but also the producer is financially responsible for the film, so I can see why Vin may insert himself into things like that, but typically that is the director's job to get the performances out of the actors. How does Johnson feel about Diesel's explanation? One part of me feels like there's no way I would dignify any of that bullshit with an answer, he told Vanity Fair. But here's the truth. I go into every project giving it my all. And if I feel that there's some things that need to be squared away and handled and taken care of, then I do it. And it's just that simple. So when I read that, just like everybody else, I laughed. I laughed hard. We all laughed. And somewhere, I'm sure Fellini is laughing too. Dragging Fellini into this fight, these guys. Jeez, leave the man alone. To go back to chat, Dory's saying, Fast 10, no time for candy ass. Could be, could be. Vin Diesel drove the original Fast series into the ground, and The Rock was the savior. Also, a good take, because I'm pretty sure no one gave a shit, or no one probably would have given a shit about Fast 5 if not for The Rock being in it, and The Rock continuing to be in it past that. And yeah, I mean, the extent to which Vin Diesel is responsible for the series being bad up until Fast 5, I don't know. Like, he wasn't in Fast 2, he wasn't in Tokyo Drift, except for the very, very end. And then Fast 4 was not the greatest movie. I don't know to what end it's his responsibility that it wasn't that good. But yeah, The Rock coming in Fast 5 was great. It was a wonderful like injection of both star power, but his charisma as well on set and on stage and on screen. There's a reason why he's the biggest movie star in the world and commands the biggest amount of money. Like, he's just has that star quality to him. So yeah, The Rock actually did quite a bit. Like, he did a lot for that franchise. No doubt, no doubt. All right, everybody. I think that's the end of what I would call a very successful live stream. We had more people than usual checking out this stream. They didn't stick around because we weren't talking about Scream the whole time, unfortunately. But hopefully they are subscribers. And if you did stick around and you are not either CK, Brent, or Dory, who I appreciate, thank you all for being here, and you haven't subscribed or liked this live stream, I would love it if you were to do that. That would be super cool. That's what cool people would do in this instance. So please make sure to come back tomorrow. We'll be back again with the morning movie show, and on Thursday and Friday as well. And then on Sunday, it will be the public domain picture show again, showing Nosferatu. That will be at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And if you missed that, and if you missed the last one, don't worry, because they're still available on the channel. You can just go watch them right now. And you can listen to me comment and answer chat questions and things like this while we watch a movie. It's actually a lot of fun. So once again, Nosferatu, the silent film version of Nosferatu. And yeah, more morning movie shows to come, and also a special video, which I hope will come out on Friday. And it will be the first video in a new series of videos that will hopefully be the thing that kind of propels this channel forward, because as great as these live streams are, and as much as I love doing them, not getting new subscribers on them. It's just the way it is, and a lot of features and even the ability to become monetized is on the back of subscribers and getting subscribers. So I need to start focusing more on projects and videos that will actually bring in more people to the channel. As fun as the live streams are, they don't really do it. In fact, they don't do it at all. But I still think it's important. I still think it's fun, and I do enjoy doing this. It's like one of the better parts of my day. So they will continue for now, unless it seems like they are really hurting the channel, which it doesn't seem like they are. But if that is the case, these could potentially go away. But yes, please get excited for the new video that's coming out on Friday, hopefully Friday. Share it when it does come out. Watch it a bunch of times. Like and subscribe and comment and do all the things that you wonderful people always tend to do. And let's just keep that upward momentum going, because we've got it. It's slight, it's small, but the momentum is there. And then the snowball effect happens. And then all of a sudden, I'm a fucking influencer jetting around to film festivals all over the world. I kind of doubt that would actually happen, but maybe. So once again, thank you everyone for tuning in. It's been another good stream, another great time chatting with you. No technical difficulties today, which is nice. And I guess that's all I have to say about that. So I will talk to you tomorrow morning. Have a good one. Enjoy your Tuesday. Go see a movie for cheap tonight. It'll be a good time.